Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole, and I'm James Quisenberry from Ward 7. I'll be chairing this evening. Could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Wu? Here. Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey? Ms. Colasetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Wilkin? Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Present.
All right, first item on the agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from December 2nd, 2024. It's a Committee of the Whole minutes. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
I'm here, and
Any
I
substantial?
haven't heard anything until then.
Any substantial changes to the minutes to discuss? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it unanimously. Next, we have additions to the agenda. I have several things that have been given to me as adjustments to the agenda. The first thing I want to note is a request that we move items 12, 13, and 14 to the beginning of new business. Those are related to the community partnerships with Economic Development Corp. and
Experience Champaign-Urbana.
Experience Champaign-Urbana.
Experience, yes.
And then I do have a note from Grace Wilkin that I will read during public input because it's pertinent to things we'll be discussing later. And finally, we'd like to move item number 4, the omnibus budget ordinance, to come after item 5 because 3 and what's currently 3 and 5 should be together. Should be in order together. Okay, does everybody, did I make that clear enough and everybody comfortable with that? So can I have a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted?
Move approval of the agenda as adjusted.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All those in favor, any other additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That also passes unanimously. In presentations and public input, we have guests this evening from Silver Hearts. Giovanna, are you presenting for us? All right, would you come up to the table and introduce yourself and the guests?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I can't hear you guys.
Can you hear us at all?
I can hear.
Nothing has started yet, Sharice. They're getting organized at the table. And those microphones, there's a light on the front of them to indicate when they're on, and they have to be about an inch or two from your mouth for them to work properly. So you may have to pull them uncomfortably close. Make sure your microphone's on and pull it much closer. There you go. There's a light.
Oh, this is going to be
Yeah,
fun.
we can hear you now.
Man, electronics do not go well together, guys. No comment from the peanut gallery. So I'll just go ahead and briefly. So I'm Giovanna, and I have my team with me. I'll briefly introduce them, but you'll get a little bit more in a minute. I have Jeremy Overman with us. He's one of our founding members. We have back there Neil Wisely, one of our founding members. I have Lily and Iva, who are our leaders of what is a new program you'll hear a little bit about called Bronze Hearts. And we also have joining us today in the back, Debo, and I can never say his full name, but it's Powell. He's with the Coast team from the U of I, and he's actually helping us get things started again and get back to work in a neighborhood that so desperately needs us. So, okay, and I see my slide is up. So you ready, kiddo? Do you have your paper? You might want to go get it while I'm sharing. Okay. Finally, the kids were asleep. The apartment was quiet and dark, and I settled into our makeshift couch to watch my favorite crime show. I heard sirens and saw emergency lights reflected in the window, so I assumed it was from my show. It wasn't until it ended that I realized that it was coming from outside, and it was right outside my girl's room. There were cops everywhere. An ambulance and paramedics were working on someone in the street. I quickly locked up the apartment and ran outside to find out what the heck was going on. People were everywhere, looking for answers. All the streets from Silver and Philo to Fletcher and Vaughter 2 were blocked off. A young man had been shot, and police were looking for the shooter. The scene looked like it was from a movie, but this was real, and it was now my family's reality. After being homeless for 5 months with a 3-year-old and a newborn, this apartment on Silver Street was the only place we could find that would rent to us. This was our introduction to the neighborhood, one that was riddled with violence and crime, but I had no choice, no other options. As I sat in my apartment that night, all I could think of was these kids, these young adults and their families, lives torn apart because the only way they knew how to solve a problem was with violence. The next day, I called a few friends in church and shared with them what had happened and how, as disciples of Christ, we had to do something. This is how Silver Hearts started. My name is Giovanna, and I'm proud to have 4 of our founding members with me today. Neil Wieslow, our computer extraordinaire. Jeremy Overman, my jack of all trades and my rescuer tonight. My daughters, Lily and Iva, leaders of our new Bronze Hearts program, and together we have been breaking barriers and building bridges.
All right. The first thing we did for the neighborhood was to have casual outdoor cookout dinners with some of the residents in the apartments near Silver and Vaughter Streets during the summer and fall of 2016. Everyone would bring some food to share or grill, and we just met the residents in a very natural way and formed relationships with them. It was a small group of regulars, but sometimes others would join us. Here's a picture of most of the original group, and other residents joined in as time went on. This was the start of some better relationships within the community. During the middle of the winter, we started hosting prayer meetings and invited people in the neighborhood to join us monthly at Giovanna's apartment. Part of the prayer time always included prayers for more peace and an end to the violence in the neighborhood. In 2017, we planned and then held our first block party in July. This was more of a success than we expected it to be, and we believe God blessed our efforts. It was the first time I saw more than a small group of people interacting with one another in the neighborhood. Mayor Diane Marlin and some of the city council members attended. We saw from this first block party a reconnection of neighborly relationships. Afterwards, we continued to hold annual block parties, except during some of the years of the pandemic. Urbana police officers were present at these and participated in some of the events. We saw very positive interaction between them and both children and adults from the neighborhood. During one summer, unfortunately, there was a shooting in the neighborhood just a few days before the block party. But a teen rap group, shown in the bottom right picture here, overcame their fears and performed when they realized that Urbana police would be present at the block party. Here are some more pictures from block parties. The left picture shows Commander Surly's. The bottom middle picture shows peace poles that were painted, and these are still displayed outside the Phillips Rec Center. At the beginning of the summer most years, we held a free ice cream social for residents. This was a casual, no-pressure event that brought many residents together for some friendly interaction. Urbana Police were a welcome presence at these. Iva will now speak. She would like to share about one of these times. So looking at the middle picture at the bottom of the slide, it's difficult to see because of the lighting, but what is happening here, Iva?
This is a little girl teaching a police officer how to ride a hoverboard.
But was he very good at using the hoverboard?
No.
Did you think that was funny?
He fell flat on his butt.
Thank you, Iva. Knowing that there were needy families in the area, we organized a Halloween costume drive. We organized Halloween costume drives in the early fall to collect donated costumes to give to the children. Costumes were donated by people in the larger Champaign-Urbana community. Oops. We then distributed the costumes to children in the neighborhood in October. We also gave a Halloween party for residents and their children. The children and parents were grateful for the costumes. A real sense of community relationships was developing among the families that attended. At this party, we held a contest asking residents to create a new name for the neighborhood. From their responses, we selected the name Silverwood. So Silverwood became the new official name. During the pandemic, we prepared bags of food and delivered them to approximately 150 families in the neighborhood. We did this monthly during most of the pandemic. Many residents were helped during a time of increased need. We saw residents who gave their food packages to others if they themselves were not in need. During the pandemic, we also did various other projects for Silverwood, usually in partnership with other community organizations. These are listed on a handout that Iva will give you after our presentation. Also during the pandemic, we held an outdoor Halloween party featuring students from the university who dressed in superhero costumes. We also gave out candy to the children and other food to residents in need. Most of what we did would not have been possible without numerous other community organizations, churches, Mayor Marlin, and various Urbana city departments. One of the keys to successfully improving Silverwood was the consistent and persistent presence of our efforts. People in the neighborhood began to get a sense that someone truly cared about them and that they mattered as people and were not merely a project. Due to our continued presence and engagement, we also formed real relationships with a number of residents. This was not quick or easy work by any means, but the result was a real positive impact on the community. Giovanna will now speak next and give the conclusion.
Thank you, Jeremy and Iva. In addition to the ways that we've been able to give to Silverwood, they have given back. Raffles have been held at block parties and money donated to Crisis Nursery and CatSnap. During COVID, they placed the hearts in their windows to honor those working despite the danger, and every year at the Festival of Trees, you'll find the Silver Hearts Cozy Winter Comfort Tree to bid on. Our communities have so much to give when given the opportunities. In closing, I want to say thank you for the last 9 years. Urbana has welcomed my family. You have stood by us and supported us even in our darkest days. You broke barriers and built bridges with us and helped to heal a broken community. Sadly, those bridges are in desperate need of repair, but we know that together it can be done. Today, we would like to leave you with the words of one of our founding members who we recently lost, the late Janelle Rogers, shared by her niece Lily, after which Iva will be handing out a packet with more information and a silver heart to carry with you to remind you that with kindness and love, anything is possible. Lily and Iva are leading our new Bronze Hearts program that is bringing our new generation and teaching them how to be great community helpers. Lily? Oops, sorry, let me. I'll hold it, you read.
Here.
Heal trauma, find freedom.
Time.
Become whole again. That emptiness.
Fan.
Can I move for additional 5 minutes?
Second.
Aye.
Heal trauma, find freedom, become whole again, that emptiness, it can be filled. With such peace beyond your imagination, walk in a new way, see life through eyes as if it were all new. Colors become move, vibrant, the bird singing is no longer annoying, but bring comfort, knowing there is a presence bigger than all of us that has been there with us all along, and now shining a light to a path beyond our scope of understanding.
All right, thank you. Would you take questions if council has any?
Yes, definitely. And while I'm doing that, is it okay that Iva goes ahead and hands out these packets that
Sure.
they put together? Okay. Hand out up here first. Okay, Iva. Okay.
Council, do you have any questions?
I would like to.
Go ahead, Shreese.
Well, thank you, Giovanna, for that presentation. It was really nice, and I'm really sorry about the person that you just recently lost. And if you would please leave a packet on my seat where I sit, I'd appreciate it so that I can pick it up later on this week when I come in to get meds for my mom. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So and thank you for all that you do to try to bring the community together and make community. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And just a quick note, Janelle's story is actually in this packet because she was able to leave Silverwood. Basically, she passed with 4 years clean and sober, something that would not have been possible without the work in Silverwood.
All right, thank you. I did have one question of the block party. It was always a highlight for me. I was able to join it several times. Do we have a timeline for having one this summer?
Yes, we actually, for those that didn't know, due to some health problems, I took about 1.5 years off. Thanks to Debo. Nobody asked you. Welcome to teenagerhood. Thanks to Debo, we actually are putting a whole new team together. So we'll be able to spread the work out, and that is on our agenda this week. And we will be scheduling a block party with the adjoining ice cream social. So yeah, we're excited. I've missed y'all.
All right, and do you expect that to be in June?
It'll be in June. Our plan is to move it back. We've always, I think, James, had it at the beginning of June because it sets us up for a summer with less violence because people are communicating. So that's the current plan.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it. Any other questions? All right, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next up is time for public input. If you are here to address the Urbana City Council, please approach the microphone here and state your name, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Brian Dolliner. I live at 303 West Locust in Urbana. I'm coming tonight to express support for an ordinance that Councilperson Grace Wilkins has put forward for greater oversight for police surveillance technology. First, I wanted to mention that I was one of 3 people to support a sanctuary ordinance which was passed by Urbana, an ordinance which we now see the great value in. It was not easy at that time passing that ordinance, but now people are holding it up as a piece of their talking points in their campaigns and casting us as being anti-police and themselves as being pro-police. And when myself, when I come here, I'm pro-community to try to find solutions that are good for all of us. In particular, tonight, I wanted to point out a technology, a police technology of concern. Myself and some other people have been investigating something called Cellebrite. and Urbana Police has been utilizing software provided by Cellebrite. They provide technology to allow the police to hack into people's phones. This is a company, Cellebrite, based in Israel, as it turns out. Cellebrite has been cited by Amnesty International to sell its products to various bad governments, selling their technology to Uganda's dictatorship, to Bangladesh, which is supporting death squads, to Chinese, who are putting down pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. My family's from Yugoslavia and Slovenia in particular. The Dahlinders come from Slovenia, but they were formerly part of Serbia, which has got a bad government in Serbia. Serbia's been going after journalists and environmental activists. In one case, the Cellebrite technology was used. A journalist was stopped during a traffic suspected DUI, taken back to the station. Their phone was confiscated. The journalist was cleared of the DUI, but when he got his phone back, he found that his phone had been hacked. So this is the way that Cellebrite is selling its technology to these kind of governments, and it's being used and also being sold to Urbana Police Department, which raises certain ethical questions that needs to be, that the public should be aware of, the council should be aware of, and consider in future decisions. According to FOIA documents that we obtained, the Urbana Police has had access and contracts with Cellebrite for some 10 years. And in 2024 alone, there was $9,000 spent on the software. So if you take 9,000 times 10, it's a big chunk of money. They've also in possession of similar technology from a company called GrayKey, which I believe is based in Canada. In 2024, there was $15,000 spent on this kind of software. Now, it might be argued that this kind of technology is being used to solve crimes, violent shootings, but according to one police report, there was a man whose phone was confiscated by Urbana Police as a suspect in a shooting. His phone, all the data was downloaded. The data actually proved that he was not involved in the shooting and he was cleared of the incident. Now, this is not exactly how people should be cleared by a significant breach of their personal safety and security. And when anybody's phone can be hacked with this technology, it exposes, as my techie friends tell me, certain vulnerabilities in all of our phones, that any of our phones could be potentially hacked. I'm a journalist, so I have my own particular self-interest in having my phone hacked over some incident that I could be involved with in the future. But again, we want to find out ahead of the game whether police is in possession of this technology, not finding out after the fact. Thanks so much.
Would anybody else want to address the city council?
Hi, my name is Stephen McGuire. So that was chilling, what I just heard, that potentially our phones could be hacked. No, I mean, I don't know under the, I believe it's now USA Freedom Act, what kind of warrant would have to be used. Not only that, recently we just swore in a fascist president. Donald Trump, at his inauguration, had someone do the Sieg Heil salute. During his campaign, he said that he paraphrased Adolf Hitler in saying that migrants poison the blood of our country. The only change is changing the word Jews to migrants. We can't. We need clear oversight over these technologies and the potential that data could be hacked from our phones, transferred to bad actors who might want to compromise someone just for their opinions, is too great. we need oversight at a local level. And so, yes, I'm speaking in favor of the resolution. The counter arguments seem to have been that if we are in favor of city council having oversight of use of surveillance technologies, that somehow the police will have to consult city council for every traffic stop. This is just not the case. Obviously, for data that has been allocated for police use, you are not using any new technology to access that data. You, however, may not transfer that data to some federal authority that might use it for bad purposes. And the other counter argument has been, well, everybody's doing it. This, I don't think, flies. If it's necessary, you should be able to get city council approval over it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Neil Boyslow. First of all, these are not new concerns. Hacking of cell phones has been going on for quite some time. There have been numerous cases of celebrities having their information made public. Two, having read the ordinance that's been proposed, the majority of these surveillance techniques already have judicial oversight because a warrant is required to use them. So what further oversight does the local government have to have? And third, I would also like you to consider that based on the wording of the proposed ordinance, police body cameras become a surveillance issue as they either surveilling of the police themselves or surveilling of the people that they're interacting with. So I think these items need to be kept in mind too when considering this.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Medina, and I actually live in Champaign, but I often run into the situation where we are demonstrating, say like on campus in April of 2024, and the police from Urbana were present to silence the First Amendment rights of the demonstrators. And so I think we all have a say in the community that we live in, where the police are misused and people are arrested for mob action or charged with mob action by the state's attorney. So, okay, so we as community members exist in this community, and we pay taxes and we buy things here in Urbana, and those things also pay the taxes that pay for the police. The police are our employees. Okay, I am also a librarian, and I really think that it would be really cool if there was like a Consumer Reports that evaluated what companies try to sell to police forces, that they actually tried them and actually gave feedback on which ones were better and which ones were worse. Unfortunately, there aren't. And so what happens is there are all these companies trying to make money, and they're like, oh, we have this technology, who could we sell it to? You know who's not going to test it? You know who's just going to buy it? Are the cities and the police will just ask for it, and the cities will pay for it. And they don't even test it to see if it actually works. And so when people claim that things are data tested, and that's actually not true. Most of the technologies that are sold to the police haven't been tried and tested. It's just advertising, propaganda, people trying to make money, and people getting money for selling the technologies to the police and to the cities who are willing to hand out the money to anything that the police want. And so until there is a Consumer Reports that actually evaluates these technologies, I would say that there needs to be oversight by every city for their police officers and their police forces. And so we have oversight on just about everything else, and I don't see why we would possibly not have oversight on what the police do and use.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the Urbana City Council? See no one else coming up to the microphone. I do have a note from Councilperson Grace Wilkin, who it is, but it has relevant things to the items that we're going to discuss later. So if council, unless somebody has an objection, I'd like to read it now. Anybody have an objection? Sharice, are you okay with that?
I'm good with it. You can read it.
If you have an objection, just go ahead. Okay.
I just said you could read it. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Sharice. Yep, I got you.
Okay.
This is from Alderperson Wilkin. I apologize for missing the meeting tonight. Please read my email during council input. For ordinance 2024-12-042 on police surveillance technology, I hope that the new definitions address some operational concerns and that the committee, staff, and community continue a productive conversation. I ask that you please consider keeping this ordinance in COW, and I'm happy to answer questions and continue the discussion when I return. For 2025-01-001 electric aggregate, please confirm wording for renewable energy purchases and a city fee. Should page 2 of the contract supplier specification A and B say, if expected, savings would not be eliminated or reduced, adding the word not. These are specific things that I can bring back up when we discuss that. I'm pleased to see that the SUN grants for approval tonight. Thank you to council for support of this use of funds, to Braden and other city staff members, and to the community members who submitted applications for projects. I hope that there is support again tonight to award these grants for these projects. Please note that there is a clause for environmental impact which states that grant funds are not to be used for single-use plastic, styrofoam, etc. My intention with this is not to be burdensome on the awardees, but to set an example of enhanced consumer choices. For example, rather than buying single-use plastic water bottles for volunteers, we can use paper or reusable cups and a water to refill jug. If there are any issues with this, I encourage the awardees to reach out to grants management or to me directly. I have a water container to donate to the cause and can source compostable paper cups. Thank you again for the support on this grant. I look forward to seeing the projects completed. Thanks again, Grace Wilkin. Right, that concludes presentations and public input.
I have
Yes?
an email to read.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Please read aloud at City Council. Hi, my name is Allison Wessels. I am an Urbana community member. The purpose of my message today is to ask City Council to reaffirm Urbana's sanctuary city status for immigrants. I understand Urbana is currently considered a sanctuary city, which I am grateful for. I must urge you all to reaffirm this publicly for all community members to see, especially those who are being adversely affected by recent executive orders by new federal administration. Reaffirming sanctuary status sends a strong message that Urbana cares deeply about immigrants and other vulnerable, marginalized folks. I can understand reaffirming sanctuary status may be easy to overlook, but for those worried about their safety and security, a small piece of reassurance goes a long way. Urbana has a rich and diverse community, and we must protect it by being there for those that need it. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope you will join me in caring for our immigrant neighbors, friends, and coworkers that live in our community and need support at this time.
All right, thank you. Were there other letters? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on. Next up would be staff reports. We have a report on the state of the Urbana Police Department.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Madam Mayor, members of council. Typically this time of year, I do a update on crime. I'm going to forgo crime updates this time, and we'll touch upon it next time around. I do want to bring to your awareness that Lieutenant Coker, Corey Coker, graduated from Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command here recently. Very prestigious school, highly recognized throughout the country. Part of my duty as becoming police chief is ensuring that our command staff get the proper education and executive schooling. To my left, you are well aware that Deputy Chief Smizer graduated from the National Police Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Also, Lieutenant Coker got the Leadership Award, very prestigious out of 22 candidates. So let's recognize him for that. Can we? Thank you, thank you. I want to thank the Silver Hearts for their words of encouragement. I've been here maybe 15 months, and from this table here, that's the first time I've heard support. Now, if I missed anyone, I apologize, but from this table here, it's the first time I've heard it. And part of what I want to talk to you tonight is the email that I sent on November 12th of 2024 on the state of the Urbana Police Department. And at the conclusion of what I'm going to read out loud, Deputy Chief Smizer will crystallize it for you through a PowerPoint presentation. So on November 12th of 2024, I sent an email to City Council highlighting urgent concerns and recommendations for improvement. Tonight's presentation is a continuation of that discussion. The purpose of this presentation is to emphasize the critical need to address operational and staffing issues in order to ensure the long-term stability and effectiveness of the Urbana Police Department. I'm gonna go back a little bit. I remember a time when police recruitment was simple. We simply advertised it in the newspaper that we had open positions. Going back to when I applied for the Norfolk Police Department, I remember there was nearly 800 candidates for 40 positions. Back then, when we became, when I say we, the officers, because I was an officer during that time, when we became uninspired, our supervisors would remind us, you know, people turn 21 every day, and implying that we could easily be replaced. That's not the case nowadays. In fact, it turned upside down. We have more vacancies than we have candidates. So the current generations of officers today, they're better educated, they're more compassionate, and they tend to demand acknowledgement, respect, and support while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Unlike my generation, we saluted smartly and we went on at the expense of our families and our health. The aftermath of George Floyd led to an exodus of several police chiefs and officers from the profession, driven by a range of factors, including concerns about police reform. Many of those who remain, particularly the newer generation of officers, we embrace reforms. Unfortunately, this mass departure has created a significant vacancy problem across the country. It's not unique to Urbana, leading to the migration of officers to other departments for better opportunities, for opportunities to practice 21st century policing, better compensation, strong support from community and city leadership. Now, here in Urbana, and I feel comfortable in saying this now because I've been here long enough, our primary issue is not recruitment. We get people wanting to join our department weekly. Our problem is retention. Officers are drawn here by the department's reputation as a family-oriented workplace. I don't say that tongue-in-cheek, I say that genuinely. I've seen it for myself. One of the things I'm able to easily recognize being in a smaller department is that fact. In a larger department, you don't readily recognize it. So, however, here's the case in Urbana. After 3 to 5 years, many officers leave due to understaffing, which leads to burnout and dissatisfaction. They seek opportunities that offer them better pay, career advancement, improved technology, and most importantly, a place where they feel valued and respected. Now, Deputy Chief Smizer will further illuminate our operational challenges, including limiting staff on patrol, officer morale, key findings from officers' feedback. When they leave, I want to know why they're leaving. It's called, as you know, an exit interview. We were not capturing that data, and I kind of fancy myself as a data guy. I don't want you to think I'm making up stuff. I want you to hear from the officers. So, we'll also address turnover, potential solutions, recommendations, particularly regarding resources, equipment, and staffing. You ready? All right, we're elevating the bench.
I am ready. Is this close enough? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, like Chief Boone talked about, this is going to be a PowerPoint presentation on the state of the Urbana Police Department. I will tell you that this first slide is very, very busy. They get better. They are not all like this. I did my best to try and get it down to kind of the points that we needed to cover here. But once we get through here, hopefully it will begin moving a little quicker. So to begin, UPD has an authorized strength of 63 officers. As of last week, we only have 55 officers on the roster. And of this 55, you need to remember a few things. This 55 includes 2 officers who are currently at the Police Training Institute, so going through their initial police training. 3 officers who are in the field training program, and why that is important to point out is because those officers, while they are in field training, they are not, for lack of a better word, useful to us in the sense that they can't go out on solo patrol. So they're with their training officers. And we have 2 officers currently on light duty due to injuries. So those are 7 officers that cannot fill active patrol roles currently. Additional staffing challenges that we always have to deal with are things such as military duties. We have a number of officers who are in the National Guard and Army Reserve, so they will be gone for weekends or sometimes much longer, up to a year. They've been deployed either overseas or in training roles. We have officers that have to attend state-mandated training. That's a constant. Illnesses is a part of the business. Vacation, obviously. In-service training. Department we do training inside the department. So all of those things come at us constantly for those 55 officers' attention. Something to remember, UPD is a 24/7, 365 operation. We have a full-time criminal investigations division, so a number of our officers work as detectives. The criminal investigations division handles cases from felony theft up to and including murder. So they are busy upstairs as well. So with all these administrative and regulatory duties that require dedicated officers for those staffs, what we are left with is a patrol division that has 22 serviceable officers and 10 patrol sergeants. I will tell you, in 2024, we ended the year with just over 26,000 calls for service answered. And those 26,000 calls for service were handled by those 32 persons within the department. Last thing to note before we move on is the patrol team. Our patrol division is broken into two teams. You might have heard of the gold team and the blue team. Each team has a day shift and a night shift. We work 12-hour shifts, so when gold team is working, blue team is off, and vice versa. When fully staffed, there's 2 sergeants and 5 officers for each shift. However, out of that, when everyone is there, we have to maintain a minimum of a single supervisor and 4 officers on shift at any moment, 16 hours of the day. Those last 8 hours of the day, our minimum staffing actually drops to 1 supervisor and 3 officers from 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. per day. So kind of laying the ground, just an overview, we'll move on from there. This is another way to look at our current sworn staffing. Again, this is as of last week. The chart on the left, you will see we've got it broken down into, within the department, every sworn officer from the chief down to the officers in PTI. The actual number is the number we currently have, the target number is the number we want to have, and the variance is the difference between the two. So for example, you will see the DC-I and AS, the deputy chief that oversees investigations and services. The actual number is 0. The target is 1. We have a variance of -1. That was Deputy Chief Searles. He retired. That position currently remains unfilled. Looking down through them, the training sergeant, that was something that was approved fiscal year, our current fiscal year that we're in. That has been a position that we have never been able to fill because right below it you will see the patrol officers. Overall, we are down a total of 9. So when I said 22, you see 21 there. If you add the K-9 officer right below them, that leaves 22 patrol officers or K-9 or the K-9 to handle the calls for service. And further down, again, fiscal year 25, we were given the ability to hire 2 community engagement officers. Those positions remain unfilled because when we are down so far in patrol staffing, we cannot move people to other specialty positions. The thing that evens it out down there at the bottom, the FTO, the officers in field training and PTI, our target number, we just leave it 0. And we do have officers like I explained, so that brings the numbers back up. So that's where we get to 55 currently on the books. Our out-of-service officers are on the left. Light duty officers are officers that are injured either on duty or off duty, and they are not available to respond to calls for service. Military leave we spoke about, we currently don't have anyone. Baby leave would be if we had any pregnant officers or anyone who was staying home with someone, with a spouse who had a baby. We currently don't have anyone in that role. Pre-hire process, that's 2. So pre-hire process is officers that we have given conditional offers to. Once an officer, well, I call them officers because for purposes of what we're talking about here, they're officers. They're persons that have passed the test and have made it through the hiring process as far as all the interviews are concerned. So we have panel interviews, chief's interviews. At that point, if we like them as a candidate, we give them a conditional offer of hiring. It's contingent upon background investigations, medical evaluation, psychological evaluation. So that process usually takes a few months. The vacancies, we currently have 6 completely open spots for officers. There's no one currently slated in any way, shape, or form in those. So down below that is something I think we need to pay close attention to. And then this is again as of last week. The average experience of a UPD patrol officer is 3 years and 7 months. So for the entire patrol division, for all of our officers who are currently out handling calls for service, the average experience of that group is 3 years and 7 months. I will tell you that is very low. We are losing experienced officers. We are replacing them with new officers. That brings the average down. For comparison, the 7 patrol officers who left last year between July and November, they had an average of 5.5 years of experience. So we are losing experience and replacing with new. Moving on to the next slide, this is the department structure. As you can see, the chief of police sits at the top. I would be down 1 spot and over to the left, Deputy Chief of Operations. That was a position that was added in this current fiscal year. As you can see, the other additions were the training sergeant over on the right-hand side, and down below that, the community engagement team +2. So those were the 4 positions that were added in the current fiscal year. In a sense, none of them have been filled because now I'm the deputy chief handling both sides of the house, and then we're back to where we were when we began. If you look down on the lower left-hand corner, the lighter color fiscal year 25 requested. These are the officers that we requested in the last fiscal year and were not granted. So the 5 extra sworn officers, the 3 community service responders, sometimes called community service officers, and the 1 community engagement officer we were given 2. We needed 3 for the team. Barry Dunn's recommendations from their study that they've been completing is right below that. They recommended 7 sworn police officers and 6 non-sworn community service responders to be added to the department. And down in the lower right-hand corner, the sworn staffing as it not as it currently stands, but the structure is just a list kind of showing you where we're at there. Something we haven't talked about, but we should take a moment to talk about, is the civilian staffing. In addition, if we were fully staffed, we had 63 sworn officers. We cannot get by with just sworn officers. We need a competent and professional civilian staff to help us with our duties. And for the most part, we have that for the ones that we have, but similar to the sworn staffing where we're missing people, we are missing people on the civilian staffing side as well. You'll see it says we should have 6 police service representatives, PSRs. Those are our non-sworn staff that if you come through the front door over there and come to the window, they will be the ones that greet you. They're oftentimes the first people inside the police department that the public will see when they come to us. Says we should have 6. We currently only have 3. Now we are in a position to fill those other 3 spots. We've again went through the process to get people hired up. We're working on the background investigations. But remember, 24/7 operation. Several years ago, due to staffing, we had to shut our front desk down overnight. We simply didn't have the staff to keep it open 24 hours a day. However, we did have the staff that we would keep it open 16 hours a day. So we have been having 3 people staff that the front desk for 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. They've been really working their tails off. So I believe you've heard the term spit and Band-Aids before. This will probably be an example of that, in which we've had, so one of the persons on light duty who isn't available to handle calls for service, she's been helping out quite a bit to cover that at the front desk. We're also down a financial crimes investigator and a criminal intelligence analyst So moving on to the next slide. This is something that I think is, well, I don't have any other way of putting it other than say it might be a little shocking. What this is personnel movement between February of 2022 and present. So essentially what it is everyone who has left the department from early 2022 to where we are now in early 2025. To give you a point of reference, Chief Seraphin left in early 2022. This list begins right after him. So if I were to make this one row higher, he would have been at the very top. Moving down one, the first one says 2022, years with UPD 23, reason for leaving, retired. So that was a sergeant who retired after 23 years of service. And moving all the way down through the list, the very bottom at 2024 is 27 years of service. The reason for leaving is retired. That is Deputy Chief Searles. So between Chief Seraphin and Deputy Chief Searles, this is the number of people that we have had leave the Urbana Police Department for one reason or another. On this list, it's a total of 23 officers. As you can see, only 3 of them retired. 7 of them resigned and left law enforcement altogether. And when I say left law enforcement, they did not go to another law enforcement agency directly from UPD, which is why we say left law enforcement. I do know there are a couple of them that have made their way back into law enforcement with other departments, but there was a break. However, the most telling one for issues involving our current staffing and retention crisis is that we have had 13 officers that have resigned and went to another law enforcement agency. To put it another way, they have not left policing, they have left the Urbana Police Department. And that's for a number of reasons that I think we'll talk about here in a moment. So again, that's this chart, movement between February 2022 and present. Moving on to some recruiting challenges. This graph actually comes from the International Association of Chiefs of Police based on a study that they conducted. PERF is another one that has put out quite a bit of information, the Police Executive Research Forum, both nationwide, very highly respected organizations within the field. It's true that departments nationwide are dealing with recruiting issues. It's not specific to the Urbana Police Department. It's something that is true everywhere. So I suppose in a sense, misery loves company. We are not alone, but, and I would say that based on what is shown here in this graph from IACP, many of the things that are listed on this list we have also dealt with here. So when departments are asked what are the challenges your agency is facing towards recruitment, you'll see the very number one is applicants are unqualified. So we're just getting people that don't have the qualifications to be in the field, to be in the line of work. Next one you'll notice is competition. We are seeing that very much so here. This is not, we don't operate in a vacuum. Like Chief alluded to, we are facing stiff competition, and it's not from places around the country, it's from places in Champaign County. The only other thing that's not really on here that I found somewhat interesting from this specific one was, from this specific study, was that police in the Midwest, actually, police agencies in the Midwest, 81% of them responded that they were having these issues, which was highest in the country. So policing in the Midwest is really having difficulty filling these positions. But moving forward. So this, when we talk about challenges and issues, it's hard not to look past this slide. So what this is, and when I say we are having challenges here locally, these are the rates of pay for agencies here within Champaign County. So Urbana, Champaign, the University of Illinois Police Department, Rantoul Police Department, Champaign County Sheriff's Office. They all show up on this list. I got all this information from publicly accessible, it's the FOP contracts for all of these agencies. Urbana, unfortunately, is the line in orange. And I say unfortunately because we'll walk through it. So basically what this does is it charts the pay range for a police officer from the beginning of their career up through the 20th year of their career. While officers can and do work past 20 years, at a minimum, a police career is often considered a 20-year commitment. 20 years is oftentimes the magic number for getting a pension. As you can see, our starting pay remains competitive where we're at, but beginning at 1 year on the job, especially 3 years on the job, especially 5 years on the job, at which point even the sheriff's office passes us up, we are lagging. And that's obviously problematic when we're talking about retention. That 3, 5, 6, 7 year spot is really when we're losing a lot of key talent. Moving on to the next slide. So like Chief Boone talked about, we have started conducting exit interviews with the officers that are leaving. We don't know, we have ideas, but until you sit down and talk with these people as they're going, you know, it's just that, it's just an idea. So this is a summary of a lot of the key themes that we are seeing over and over again when we are talking to these people, our officers, as they are leaving. To go through them, compensation and benefits is one of the big ones. I can go elsewhere and get better pay and better long-term benefits. They don't even have to leave Urbana to go to a department where they can get some benefits that we just simply can't compete with. That'd be, you know, the university and a state job there, where 20 years of work will get you paid health care and retirement, which we obviously don't offer. Career opportunities, a lot of frustration involving that. A lack of specialized units frustrates officers like Chief Boone talked about. Officers, especially this generation, they don't want to, they come here every day and do the same thing, which is put a uniform on. Oftentimes, you know, if staffing is good, then they've got one officer in every beat. If staffing is not good, they can't even fill all the beats, and they go out and they handle calls for service. And there's just not too many different things that you can do here based on the size and our requirements for what we need, which we are a busy department. We have people that are calling that need our service, and we need people that can go out and handle those calls. And that means uniformed patrol officers. So that's where we have to staff. Staffing and workload kind of goes hand in hand. Shortages, mandatory overtime lead to low morale. Perfect example is last Friday. There's nothing special about last Friday. It was a cold day in mid-January. Winter's typically a little bit slower for us. It's just people are inside trying to get out of the cold, and so we don't get as many calls. So what happened on Friday? Same thing that happens quite frequently. It's not every night, and I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's every night or every day, but it happens enough that actually our staff has gotten quite adept at handling these challenges. So fully staffed, like I said, we'd have 2 sergeants and 5 officers. Minimum manning is 1 sergeant and 4 officers. So we start at 5 and 2. Well, we had an officer and a sergeant who were both using vacation days, so that takes us down to 4 and 1 at 7 a.m. But again, it's not 11 a.m. yet, it's 7 a.m. So we can go down 1 more, and we do go down 1 more because we had an officer who was attending multi-day training to go to, I believe it was crime scene processing. Again, we don't have a crime scene unit. We need to our officers have to multitask. It's a necessary training. We need to send her to that, and we did. So we're now down at staffing, or down at minimum staffing. Okay, we're still getting by until an officer has to call in sick because they have a child with a fever that can't go to daycare. It happens. That's just part of life. Now we're below minimum staffing. What do? We do the same thing we always do. Somebody that's leaving night shift after their 12-hour shift stays for 4 hours, so they're now working a 16-hour shift. At 11 a.m., our second shift, which consists of a single sergeant, comes in. So the officer who held over goes home, the sergeant comes in, they're still at minimum manning now that he came in. But now that he's in, he actually was going to do something that he wanted to do, and we wanted him to do. We want to provide them with opportunities to do things. He's on the honor guard, and he was going to go to Lieutenant Coker's graduation as part of the honor guard and present the colors. It's a nice to do, but not a need to do. And unfortunately, duty calls, and he wasn't able to go to that. He had to stay and staff the streets. At 3 p.m., we're still down one, and we call in somebody from midnight shift to start their long weekend 4 hours early. So they came in at 3 to work a 16-hour shift. So when I talk about staffing and workload, and we get through it, and that's just what we do. And that happens. It happens over and over and over again, and eventually people go, I don't want to do this anymore. I can go somewhere else where staffing is better, pay is better, and it's an issue for us. Leadership and support. Officers felt unsupported by City Council and upper command. I will say on our part, upper command, it involves us saying we are going to do things to make things better and them not feeling like that's true. I mean, there's only so many ways we can make things more efficient and help them out. And at some point, the only answer is we need more people. And if we are not helping them realize that, then they go, they're not feeling supported by us. Equipment and resources. So insufficient tools like tasers and modern policing tech are issues. Police technology, police surveillance technology, it's something we've all been talking about. I can tell you there is another side to that coin. Insufficient tools like tasers, whether or not what you feel like on tasers. Tasers have come to they have become just part of the regular kit for most police agencies and most police officers throughout the country. We still don't have enough for our patrol division. And we put barriers in the way to keep officers from carrying them. And therefore, we have officers that don't have access to them when they need them. And they tell us that as they are leaving, oftentimes. Many of these things are things that none of them, it's a combination of a lot of things. And every officer who leaves might not say all of them, but they usually say some of them in some way, shape, or form. I will say one thing that we do hear over and over again is, and this is a positive and it's a good thing and it's something I'm proud of, is that they say the strong camaraderie among colleagues and immediate supervisors is something that they really appreciated during their time here. Now, obviously, these are exit interviews, so they're leaving anyway. However, it is good to hear that when they're here, they feel as though the camaraderie and the culture within the department is pretty good, and that is a positive for us, and that is something we lean into to try and get people to stay here. But as you can see over the last couple of years, it hasn't been working as much as it used to. Speaking of technology concerns, again, this is a cut and paste out of Barry Dunn. So the Barry Dunn report, UPD scored 47 out of a possible score of 115. And that's straight out of their report at the bottom. This is one of the lower scores Barry Dunn has observed in similar assessments. And it goes on to talk about how it indicates an opportunity to improve. There are technology concerns here. There are some technology concerns that have been shared here. Again, the other side of the coin is we too have technology concerns. I don't want to talk about it too much because it's a very fluid case and one that's currently ongoing. But as I'm sure you've heard and seen in the newspaper, there was a pretty terrible crash on University Avenue that claimed the lives of a couple of people. And it's something that we're working, and I'm very proud of the men and women in the department on the work that they have put in so far. And they're doing good work. I will tell you that. And I will also tell you that this is one of many examples of us leaning on other agencies to help us with their technology that they have that we do not have access to. I'll give you one example, and I won't really delve into it much past that. The University of Illinois Police Department came over with their drone and flew their drone for us at the crash scene that gave us an overview of the crash scene that we would not otherwise have, taking pictures on the ground. So that is an example of technology that we don't have that we are asking other people for. In that specific case, I could give you 3 or 4 more other larger pieces of technology, but I'm going to hold off because it's a current investigation and I don't want it to jeopardize it. But maybe at some point in the future we can get back to that. So why is it all a problem? It's just like it says here, the importance of experience. So experienced police officers make less mistakes. Time and repetition build confidence, proficiency, and sound judgment in handling complex issues. If you go somewhere before and you've seen it before, you're more likely to be able to deal with it. You know, I've done this. Might not be exactly the same, but it's close. And you can lean on that experience, the training, to get you through those tough calls when you don't have a lot of time to sit down and go, gee, I've never done this before. Policing is no different than any career. It's skill development and effectiveness in the job get better the longer you've done it. Training requirements is something that I haven't talked about specifically, but I will tell you that police officers, brand new patrol officers, are some of the longest, it takes the longest to train them of a lot of, if not all, city employees. So when we talk about giving someone a conditional hire, that begins a process that's several months along before we even get them to the police academy, provided they get through that entire process. PTI is a 4-month process. The field training program is a minimum of a 4-month process. And so on average, it takes a year from, thank you, we'd like to give you a conditional offer, to the point where that officer can now go out and handle their first solo call for service on their own, whatever that call for service is. So the cost of training shouldn't be overlooked either. It costs a lot of money to hire police officers. You've got the hiring process, the training process, all the equipment that's involved. We have to pay them and provide benefits while they're in training. It's over $100,000 just again before they're prepared to go out and start handling calls for service on their own. And that is money that if we're spending over and over again, if they're staying 18 months, 24 months, 48, 60 months, and they leave, then we're back at square one and starting over again, hiring the new person and beginning that lengthy and expensive training process. So that is why it's a problem. So we said we'd talk about problems. We said we'd talk about solutions. Some of the solutions. These aren't all of the solutions. But they're ones that are worth talking about. Staffing is just, frankly, UPD needs to expand its workforce. We don't have enough officers. As is pointed out, Barry Dunn. If you don't want to believe us, we paid a lot of money for the Barry Dunn study. They said the same thing. Pay is one that we need to work on. Obviously, the patrol officers and patrol sergeants are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. That's not something that it would have to be bargained for. It's not something we can just do unilaterally or should do unilaterally, but it's something we need to be aware of when the time comes for that collective bargaining agreement to open back up. If I were king for a day, it's one of the things that I would talk about is shrinking the pay scale. That's something that a lot of different departments have done that we have not yet done, and by that I mean Urbana's got a very old pay scale in its collective bargaining agreement that's still 30 years. It's 30 years long. It looks like a set of stairs and goes all the way up 30 years. Nobody thinks like that anymore, whether it's generational or whether it's the shift in the workforce. People don't look 30 years down the line, they look 5 years down the line. Where am I going to be in 4 years? Where am I going to be in 6 years? Not where am I going to be in 27 years? So shrinking that pay scale is to, again, what a lot of other departments are doing. If I went back to that line chart, you would see that's where they're hitting the 1, 3, 5 year, and they're just, we are not keeping up. We could explore additional benefits such as implementing an RHS program, which is a retirement health savings, to enhance officer retention. One of the things I did talk about was, again, who we're competing with, not on the other side of the country or up in Chicago. It's a mile that way. It's the University Police Department. Right now, we've got officers who, if they stay here for 20 years, the only thing they get in retirement is the ability to stay on the city's health care at their cost, which is rather expensive. So maybe something like an RHS, which other municipal police departments have, would be something that we could explore as far as a benefit that we could offer that could hopefully grow a pot of money for them over their career that they could use for healthcare costs in retirement. One thought. When we talk about technology as far as possible solutions, so we talk about 21st century policing initiatives. That's one of the pillars of 21st century policing is implementing some technology such as Flock ALPRs. Again, a big topic of conversation here, as it should be in the city, but it's a well-known fact that we're the only department in the county that has a standalone police agency that doesn't utilize this technology. And that kind of keys into the next one, which is focus on acquiring tools that serve as manpower multipliers to increase efficiency. We can only make ourselves so efficient until we have to rely on some other things and tools that can help us with those efficiencies. And those are the kind of things you get with things like Flock ALPRs, surveillance cameras, those types of things. Again, possible solutions, and obviously something that should be and will be discussed here in this room and throughout the community. With that being said, I believe we are at the end. So does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Mary Alice.
Hi, thank you so much for providing that background and some thoughts that you might have in terms of what we might do to address this. One thing I was noticing in the pay scales that you had like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and then you jumped. And so you also mentioned in your solution making that pay scale, I can't remember the phrase that you used, but shrinking it, I guess is what you said. So what is common in terms of the years that people get a bump? Is it common, it's like 1 year and 3 year and 5 years? Is it common every year? What is the...
Different places do it different ways. Rantoul, for example, I think gets a big bump like 1 or 2 years after they get off probation, so it's very early. I would say the one commonality that we're seeing, and one of the things I like to do is when I go to recruiting fairs, I walk around and grab everybody else's stuff to see kind of who we're competing with, and so a lot of it's from the suburbs. So it's not all apples to apples, but what we are seeing is again that 1, 3, 5, 6. 7 year, kind of between years 3 and 5 is when you see the pay scales really ramp up to the point where in different departments do it different ways, but it's not very often it's becoming less common that you see pay scales like we have, that is just kind of a linear line that's kind of moving up throughout the entire career. It gets a little deeper than that into Tier 2 retirements as to why that is. It's one of the many reasons why that is, but I might put everybody to sleep if I start talking about that. So.
And then during your exit interviews, you had said that there was, I think I wrote down the number, 13 people who had left for other agencies. Do you know if those other agencies were in this locale? I'm sorry?
The 13, we didn't start the exit interviews, collecting that data until July.
So more recently?
Yes, and that's impacting seven individuals, the other 6.
But to your question, I think if I understood, you asked where are they leaving to?
Yes.
Yes, so several of them have left for the University of Illinois Police Department. We've had them leave for the Urbana County Sheriff's Office. We've had one go to Gifford PD. We have had several of them leave. A couple of them left for out of state. A couple of them left for places further north, up in the suburbs.
Geographically located, it's not all centrally located here, I guess it sounds like it's a little bit spread out.
It is a little bit spread out. It's a little here and there. We've had several to the university specifically, which is something new, something we've never had to deal with previously.
Well, they've been hiring more people so they can take
They've
care
been
of
hiring more
Champaign.
and they changed their pay scale and, so those are the issues.
The other piece of that, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 of those 13 were sergeants?
Yes, and
So
mid-career.
when you have sergeants who shape these younger officers departing for other agencies, they have more influence over these officers than I do, he do, because they see and work with these sergeants every day. So when the sergeants start losing faith in the process, we got some real work to do in addressing this issue. This has been gone on for some time, and I understand now, having been here 14, 15 months, whatever the case may be, there's a challenge for advancement. Some of the things I've said day one, here we are again. As I said, good hearts, good minds. The recruitment piece is not an issue. It's once they get here and they start looking over the fence. These young officers are free agents, okay? There used to be a time everybody was full. They didn't have an opportunity to say, I think I want to go over there because they got more stuff. It didn't exist. Now it exists. So police departments are either going to make some modifications or try to do more with less and incur litigation, because that's typically what will happen, some form of litigation. And then folks will say, well, you've been to this address 7 times for domestic violence, or whatever the case may be. Why hadn't you done anything? And when I say 7 times, that's a reality. That's not something I just pulled out of my head. We are a very responsive police department. We have no flexibility. I've said this many a times. We have no ability to be progressive. Just don't.
Any other questions? Therese?
Yes, I have a question. If these issues aren't mitigated in a timely fashion, where do you see the UPD? What future do you see for the UPD?
So we are currently looking at processes where we can try to take some of the responsibilities in terms of calls of service off of the patrol division with respect to a piece of software that we are looking at called CopLogic Doors. I sent you guys months ago an example of how that would work. Certain calls for service, the citizen could put the information in themselves as opposed to a car actually going there. The other piece is alternative police response, and that's out of our wheelhouse. That's in your wheelhouse. But I do know this, you know, we're going to get to a point where him and I are going to be in a police car answering calls for service and trying to be the chief and deputy chief at the same time. We have to stop the bleeding. And I'm being honest, folks, I would hope there would be more questions surrounding this. I really did, because I can see other topics get a ton of questions. I'll be very disappointed at this juncture if the information you've received, not just tonight, in months, and there's no questions. Sorry.
Yes, Jia.
Thanks. I'm curious, because like you said, the contract, right, in terms of the compensation level, there's a say that the city has in terms of the negotiation with the FOP, but there are also elements that it's not as simple as here's a new pay scale. So I'm curious, have we seen any impact with the incentives that the council has approved to try to recruit and retain officers?
You're talking about the bonuses?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have 7 folk leave in the last 7 months, it kind of speaks for itself, you know. We've had 7 bodies since July leave here. So have we seen an impact? I'm not going to say no entirely. I'm sure it has some impact because, you know, we are still able to meet the bare minimum. But with that, we're just being responsive. We have no way of diverting crime. No way.
Did you have any follow-up? Okay, I did have a question. If you could roll back to the exit interview list. Can you tell me a little bit about what kind of specialized units come up in that second bullet there? What kind of, or what kind of specialized units other departments might have that are part of that conversation? What kind of units are we talking about?
Well, I think one of the things we're talking about here at UPD is something that there have been a number of officers that want to get on, if we were able to stand it up, would be the community engagement team. That is an example of a specialized unit, something where in that instance, the team would be going out and doing a number of things. It wouldn't be all, you know, meet and greets and shaking hands in the park, but that would be a portion of what they were doing in addition to other duties. I mean, you talk about things at large. Some things are just things that we're never going to be able to staff. We're never going to have a mounted patrol unit. You know, it would be great to have some horses. We're never going to have horses in the CR side. But things like motorcycle unit, that's something that is not totally out of the norm for a department our size, but it's something that we don't have the ability to stand up. We have a number of officers who over the years have been trained into riding bikes, so we have a bike team. They're never able to get the bikes out because we just don't have the staffing that allows them to do it, because if you get a call 3 miles away and you need to be there in 2 minutes, you're not going to be there on a bicycle. So the bikes get stored. I could probably come up with half a dozen more if given the time, but I mean, I could follow up with you if you...
Well, yeah, you mentioned one of the things that took time in a particular example was crime scene processing. Is that a specialized unit? Does that,
yes.
Does that have to be sworn officers to be a crime scene processing?
It doesn't
person?
necessarily have to be sworn officers to do crime scene processing. It's probably better, if not best practice, if it is. It needs to be someone that has the ability to have some ability to go to court and testify as to what they're doing, and and kind of win over a judge and jury that they know what they're doing. And oftentimes that comes with, you know, with being a sworn officer. But a crime scene unit would be a good example of like a specialized role that we could dedicate someone to, as opposed to other duties as assigned, which is so something that I've been interested in for a long time. Earlier in my career, I was a traffic crash investigator, and again, it wasn't something I did stand alone. I was a detective, and they sent me to some specialized training for traffic crash reconstruction, and at times I would be able to get to do that, but again, it's not something we have. It's not a full-time position. We don't
Yeah,
have
these aren't necessarily other jobs that people do. These are other skill sets that people are trained in, like our fire department is trained in rescuing people when there's been a cave-in or something like that. It's a special skill set.
You can do it both ways. So some departments have, that is what you do. That's your full job. They have a full-time traffic unit that does nothing but.
At our size, that's probably not likely.
Not under our current structure.
Just
We just
something,
don't have.
some other interesting skill that
Yeah, well,
they can
for
utilize in their
example,
policing.
traffic would be a good one, and that might be an interesting, it's not so much a skill, but something that'd be dedicated. Instead of handling calls for service, your singular focus is traffic enforcement. And there's
Traffic investigation.
enforcement investigation, and DUI enforcement, all of those things. I mean, you can do that all day, every day, if you had the staffing to dedicate towards a unit like that. But right now, it's, again, other duties is assigned, so.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mary Alice?
So I have one final question for you. So you gave us a list of items that we should think about. From your perspective and experience, what is the top thing that city council should be discussing?
Manpower, adding to the staff.
The thing that one of my takeaways from this presentation is it's manpower, but it is also highly related to retention, right? So being able to keep the staff that we have and being able to convince the staff that we have that this is a good place to work for the long term. So if that's the case, I mean, certainly having enough staff is very important, but is that what you're saying, that would potentially solve some of the retention?
Officers tend to get disgruntled, uninspired when they have to work so much that they're called in during their time off. As I said earlier, this generation values life-work balance. My generation, we wanted to work as much overtime as we could. This generation, that's not the case. None of this gets fixed unless you increase manpower. None of it, because you can't do anything else. You can't have specialized unit without manpower. You can't do investigations without manpower. Manpower is the tip of the spear. You can't get around it, folks. Can't get around it.
Yes, Chair.
So I'm glad we're having this conversation now, because I feel like it often comes up just at the time of the budget, and then we're trying to figure out how does that fit into the overall city needs, and it does get complicated. During our last budget conversation, the question about overtime came up, and we were told both staff needed to increase and overtime was going to increase. But we're seeing that some of the things that are causing challenges for our officers who are leaving is some of that overtime piece as well. I'm just kind of curious, like, where are we in terms of looking at, is there a way to help with that work-life balance of, if we say we're going to bring more officers on, is there a way of reducing the amount of overtime that each of those officers are working? Because there's a monetary component of that, right? It frees up room in the budget, but it also could help with some of that balance piece.
Yeah, good question. Theoretically, it should help, okay? I think the question I was asked the last time, it was more definitive. I can't foresee the future. This isn't Los Angeles, but if we had fires, officers would be mandated to work overtime. But all things being normal, there would be less overtime. In fact, we are putting together, and I'll present it the next time, or I could present it to you once it's complete, how overtime and manpower go hand in hand. I'm going back 5 years and looking at, okay, we're fully staffed this time. This is the amount of overtime that was spent. We were not fully staffed. This is the amount of overtime that was spent. Going back 5 years, so.
Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, I would just say that would be really helpful. I know I asked that question, and from my perspective, I thought I was being clear, but it sounds like maybe not. Right. So, but I know I did raise that question as well, but I think, again, having that data as we're looking at things, and then also keeping in mind that we are also looking at some of the alternate response options and having a better sense as we're having these conversations, or what are the potential implications, right? What can we be taking off of our officers' plate? And I want to acknowledge, during the last budget, I had that question for you of why now, right? Like, what is it that's causing this fire? And I have to say that one of the things that I did find compelling, even though we haven't come to the solution, was hearing from someone who's currently a member of the Urbana Police Department, we're losing good people, right? And so I know, certainly Chief Boone, you and I don't always see eye to eye, but I certainly want to be part of this solution. I think that there are a lot of moving pieces as we look at what safety and, what all of our options are in this city, but certainly recognize that us losing good officers is not going to be good for any aspect of this. So look forward to seeing how we can piece these pieces together, and I'm glad we're doing it now rather than just when the budget comes forward and we're being asked to make tough choices about what of all the city's needs do we invest in.
All right, Diane, 1 second. Sharice, did you have anything else?
Yeah, because another question that I have is, once again, if these issues are not mitigated and we continue to lose personnel the way that we're losing personnel, how does that affect the citizenry and the residents of Urbana?
Well, we'd have to look
How
at.
do you see that would affect them, at least?
It would be modifying what calls for services that we would respond to. We would have to take a deep look at technology that would lighten the workload for PD, alternative police response, that's a issue that could help, but that's down the line. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. Or something I suggest months ago, scaling back even further the types of calls to service that we would go to. Absent of getting bodies, there's very limited opportunities to address it. What you try to do is address the workload first.
I suppose an example, something, let me peel the curtain back a little bit right now. One of the things that we are doing, in addition, or a portion of the Barry Dunn, is doing a beat analysis. So we are deciding, based on our call load, the amount of calls we go to, and our current beat structure, the way we have it laid out, is there a way that we can become more efficient in the way that we are responding to these calls for service? So one of the potential solutions is, although our current beat structure is rather, it's good in the sense that all the beats get the same amount of calls, we oftentimes find ourselves in positions where we don't have enough officers to staff all the beats on any given shift. And so we have ways of prioritizing, and everybody knows which beat covers which beat if you're not there, but that leads to some inefficiencies when we're sending people all over town outside of their beats to handle calls. And one possible solution is to lower the number of beats within town. We can staff more officers if we have a smaller number of beats. The downside being, we might citizens might be waiting longer for officers to respond because the way it would work out is that we would no longer be sending people from outside their beats to call. You would basically wait for the beat officer. And if they are tied up on something, then you might be waiting a while, depending on the priority of the call. So is it more efficient? Yes. Is it as good of a service? It probably depends on who you ask. If you're the person that's calling us and asking us to come help you with the problem and you have to wait longer, you probably aren't thinking that it's as good of a service delivery model. But those are just conversations that we have on a weekly basis, if not daily, and things that we have to try and figure out.
And limiting beats doesn't necessarily, it makes you a bit more efficient, but it doesn't necessarily impact the calls for service. The calls for service will still remain the calls for service.
Did that get your question, Sharice?
Yeah, mostly. I think what worries me from what I'm hearing is that not having enough personnel and staff to patrol and or answer calls to service basically does mean that when there is a particular call, you end up triaging whether or not it is when it will be answered. If you have a homicide, and please correct me if I'm looking at this the wrong way. If you have a homicide or a DV call of some kind, that would require, because of processing and trying to mitigate it in a particular issue or something, that would require more time for an officer or officers to take care of the issue, as opposed to if someone's house is burgled and they're calling the police to come and investigate that particular thing.
Excuse me, that's correct. But not only more time, more officers. The challenge is when you have another of the same type of call. There just isn't enough officers to handle two conflicts at once, which is why I've said over and over and over, there's no flexibility built in this system.
Right. Go ahead, Diane.
So if there are,
sorry. Are you
if
done,
there are,
Sharice?
no, I'm not done. So in other words, if there are two or three calls in different parts of the city for domestic violence, somebody's going to have to wait longer than the other.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Diane.
Going to the equipment and resources, I was on city council when tasers were first approved for UPD, and one of the policies put into place was that only officers who had been CIT trained were allowed to carry a taser. And at that time, it wasn't the cost of the equipment, it was getting people trained. Is that still a barrier now is that a reason why not everyone has the access to a taser?
Yes, that is one of the main barriers, because the other part that comes along with the requirement for the CIT training, it's a two-pronged approach, or our problem is that CIT training, while it is good training, does not come around very often. It's hard to get officers in it. And additionally, there is a requirement that officers have to be, it's either 1 or 2 year, I believe it's 2 year minimum before they're allowed to even go to the training. So when you're looking at a department that has, a patrol division of 3.5 years of average experience, you've got an awful lot of patrol officers that haven't been on the street long enough to even get an opportunity to go to that training, and therefore they're clearly not carrying a taser.
Is there an alternative to that would provide the same, that would be as effective, but that wouldn't require a lot of our younger officers to not have access to these tools?
Well, yeah, actually, we're looking into that now. That's one of the things that we're trying to develop, is to work with the local NAMI chapter to develop a training similar to CIT that we could do at a department-wide level where we could put a lot of our officers through that training. It is good training. It's just hard to get into.
Do other departments require CIT training before issuing a taser?
To my knowledge, no. That's something that's specific to
Okay.
here, UPD.
Thank you.
Right. Don't see any more questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll be moving on to old business. Ordinance number 2024-12-042, an ordinance establishing approval policy reporting requirements for policing surveillance technology and databases. I don't know, Grace is not here, and she has asked that we actually keep this in committee, but Jan, did you want to speak to it since it's on?
Sure. Yeah, I will briefly say that I appreciate seeing the updates both that Grace has provided and the initial response from city staff. I do want to note a misperception that this policy would apply to body cameras. That is something that explicitly is not included in some of these revisions. But I think this is why it's so important. It has taken years to get this conversation started. I'm very glad to see things moving, and like I said, appreciate the response from city staff to date, but I do think it is appropriate to keep this in the committee of the whole so that Grace is able to be present and so city staff has more time to respond to what has been provided, and we get more time for input from the community as well.
All right, yes, Diane.
Just to clarify, the response from staff included both, more recently, the list of actual physical technology that the police department has access to, and then prior to that, the council was provided, and it's in the packet as well, the list of all potential databases. Is that a fair way to summarize it? Okay.
All
So
right,
at least we have a better idea of what is specific to Urbana, which is important.
All right, thank you. Mary Alice?
So do we need a motion to just keep this in committee right now?
That's where it's going.
All right, well, I'm going to make that motion. Okay, I'm going to move that ordinance number 2024-12042, an ordinance establishing approval policy and reporting requirements for policing surveillance technology and databases, kept in the committee of the whole.
Second.
All right,
Second.
thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Chris and I had this all worked out, Mary Alice. You just kind of stepped on our plan, but it's been moved to keep this in committee of the whole, so we will take it up at the next committee of the whole. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. We're going to move into new business, and I will remind everyone that the first item of new business will be item number 12 on our agenda. A resolution number 2023-01-007R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement, Champaign County Economic Development Corporation, fiscal year 2024 through 2025. And Will is going to be our guide on these.
All right. Thank you. I know we have a long agenda today, so I'm going to do my best to be as brief as I can. So before the City Council this evening is a resolution to approve the execution of an economic development agreement with Champaign County Economic Development Corporation, and that agreement would be for $33,763, or sorry, $33,763. And then representatives from the EDC came on November 25th to talk about all the great work that they do, so I'm not going to repeat that today since we're maybe a little bit short on time. But some things I want to mention for the city is that our relationship with the EDC increases the capacity of outside consulting and resources for Urbana-based businesses, and that approval of this resolution would broadly support the Mayor Council Strategic Area number 4 of economic health, as well as strategies number 1, supporting local business, strategy number 2, enhancing employment opportunities in Urbana, and strategy number 3, recruit new businesses and industries. This agreement was contemplated during the passage of the budget, so there's no fiscal impact, and the contract is the same as our previous agreements each year with the EDC. And we've been having our agreements with the EDC for quite a long time, so this is kind of keeping the ball moving forward for one additional year. So for all that, City Council is asked to approve this resolution.
All right, do we have any questions? Don't see any questions, so could we have a motion? Yeah.
Move approval of resolution number 2025-01-007R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement, Champaign County Economic Development Corporation, fiscal year 2024-2025, for approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mary Alice. Any further discussion on this item? Therese?
No, I don't have any.
All right, seeing no discussion. This is for going to council, so I'll call voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. Next up will be resolution number 2025-01-008R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a community partnership agreement with Experience Champaign-Urbana, fiscal year 2024 through 2025.
All right, so I'll just quickly kind of run through this agreement as well. So this is a resolution for a community partnership agreement with Experience Champaign-Urbana for the current fiscal year. And in October, representatives from ECU came and presented all the great work that they're doing, so I'll also not repeat any of that. And again, mention that this agreement helps support the city, marketing the city to visitors and supporting the local tourism economy. So approving this resolution would broadly support Mayor Goal Strategic Area Number 4, Economic Health, and Strategies Number 1, supporting local business, and Strategy Number 2, enhance employment opportunities in Urbana. This agreement was also kind of contemplated in the passage of the budget, so the $15,000 that we would obligate as part of this agreement is already budgeted. And again, like the previous agreement, the format of the agreement is similar to previous years, so there's no real significant changes from our past year's agreement. And so for that, the City Council is asked to approve this resolution adopting the agreement.
All right, any questions on this one? Somebody, Sharice, anything?
No, I don't have any, but...
All right, could I have a motion?
I will move resolution number 2025-01-012R, resolution, sorry, wrong one. Let's do this again. Resolution number 2025-01-008R, a resolution approving the authorization and execution of a community partnership agreement with Experience Champaign-Urbana for fiscal year 2024-2025. Onto the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, seconded by Jaya. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say
Aye.
nay. That passes unanimously. And then we're going on to number 14, resolution number 2025-01-011R, a resolution approving an increase in the number of liquor licenses in the Class R&T designation for Urbana Gardens Restaurant Incorporated, doing business as Maple and Yoke, 810 West Killarney Street, Urbana, Illinois.
Thank you. Yes, this is simply a change in the liquor license classification that they are going to have. They're rebranding the restaurant. It was Urbana Gardens for many years, and again, it's going to be Maple and Yoke. And the changes that they're going to a liquor license that allows for the sale of all types of alcohol, whereas before it was beer and wine. So they're actually not increasing the number of licenses in the city, but simply switching one for the other.
Yes, any questions?
Diane, this is alcohol to accompany a meal, right?
Yes, it's Urbana Gardens Restaurant.
Yeah.
R&T
Well,
is restaurant and tavern, right?
Restaurant and tavern liquor license and they're changing their name.
But all the drinking will be on premises? And,
Absolutely,
right,
yes.
Right, yeah. Just want to make that.
Any other questions? Charisse?
No, I'm glad that they're increasing their customer base. Actually, I think that's why they're trying to do this. So, no, I have no other questions.
All right, could I have a motion?
I'll move resolution number 2025-01-011R, resolution approving an increase in the number of liquor licenses in the Class R&T-1 designation for Urbana Gardens Restaurant, Inc., doing business as Maple and Yoke at 810 West Killarney Street in Urbana. On to City Council for approval on the consent agenda.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Charisse. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously, and now we can flip back to the front side of our agenda and move on to ordinance number 2025-01-001, an ordinance establishing authority to execute municipal electric aggregation agreements. I knew Scott Test must be around somewhere because we're talking about aggregation. Welcome,
Good
Scott.
evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have before you a one-sentence code change regarding the municipal electric aggregation program. But before we get to that, I also have before you an updated plan of operations and governance for the municipal electric aggregation program. Such a plan is required by state statute and by city council resolution. Staff may update that plan from time to time, provided they notify city council. I think it says within 7 days. So we've made some updates to that plan, and putting it in packet and talking about it tonight is your update. There are two substantive updates to the plan of operations and governance. One is on, let me get the page number for you, page 2, under the section supply specifications. These three items are a direct outcome of the conversation that City Council had about how we wanted to make purchases with the municipal electric aggregation. Those three items are essentially our goals of the program in order of priority. So first, we do item A, and if we can achieve that, we add in item B, and if we can achieve that, we add in item C. Always the first goal, producing some savings in the municipal electric aggregation program. The other change in the plan here is the substance of the ordinance before you tonight, and that is this: the background. We, in the past, when this program, municipal electric aggregation in the state of Illinois, started 12 years ago, we would get several months of notification of when we would be going out to bid with other cities in a group purchasing environment, going out to bid for electricity prices. And we would go to bid, we'd plan a date, a bid day 2 months in advance, and we'd have plenty of time to authorize the mayor or someone else to execute an agreement. We always had to authorize someone ahead of time because the offers, the pricing offers we're given are market prices. They are good till the end of the day. So we can't get an offer, put it into an agreement, and come back to City Council and then come back to Committee of the Whole and then go to City Council, especially when there's a possibility of a meeting being canceled. Like this agenda item was delayed for 2 weeks because of weather. We got away with that for years, but it was getting tighter and tighter, and the market is tighter and tighter, and the savings are smaller and smaller. And we're now in a position where we're getting a couple of weeks, 12 days notice bid day, we're following the market, this is the time to buy, and when the bid comes, of course, you'll have till the rest of the day. It's actually happened for Urbana, that our consultant said, we're taking these cities to bid, you're in the group, here's the date, and we couldn't get an authorization in time for that bid day, and we lost out and had to wait a couple months and go out again. All the other cities that that I've talked to, that our consultant works with, they have a standing authorization for someone to accept a bid and evaluate it and agree to it. And so what we're hoping to do tonight, what we're working on here, is to establish the authority so that we can receive a municipal electric aggregation bid price and accept it while it's still good before it expires. And I'll take any questions you may have.
All right. One question, I know we had Grace supplied beforehand. I don't know if you had a chance to hear that, or do you understand the question? And
yeah, so I think the spirit of what she's trying to achieve is the spirit of what we're trying to write. I can see how someone could interpret it in the inverse. If there's another way to write it so it's clear, it's okay to change it. Also doesn't have to be decided tonight. The plan of operation and governments does put bounds around how we operate the program, but the city can change the plan, amend the plan, mayor approves it, city council is notified, so we can go through this exercise again in the future at any time as well. But essentially, and I'll go back through these three goals of the aggregation program that we're trying to achieve. On that page 2, item A, first, we're trying to create savings. If we get a bid price and we can't create savings as compared to the default electricity supply, we bow out, and all of our ratepayers will go back to default supply for some period, and we'll see if there's another opportunity in the future. If we can create savings, then we go on to letter B. If we can create savings and still maintain some savings while buying renewable energy credits, then we'll go ahead and do that too to green our power supply. Now, if buying, say, 50% of renewable energy credits, 50% of our capacity, our consumption, zeroes out all the savings, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to stay with letter A. We're not going to move on to B. But if we can create savings and buy 50%, 75%, 100% of renewable energy credits to cover our consumption and still have savings, then we'll do that. And then even still, if we can buy 100% renewable energy credits, maintain some savings for ratepayers, then we can also look at taking a city fee to compensate the staff time.
okay, I read through the language, and the sense as it is in the packet as I see it seems to make sense. I know Grace wanted to add a not to the item B, I think, if expected savings would not be eliminated or reduced. I'm not sure that would accomplish what she's looking for in the whole of how it's stated.
I can only say the meaning of my language is we'll buy 100% renewable energy credits if the expected savings, by doing so, aren't all eaten up. If there's another way to put it, we can certainly make an amendment and put it back in council packet for your notification.
I do, maybe I do see that he wants to add a not because the sense is if the expected savings would be eliminated, and we want it to not be eliminated or significantly reduced.
Mm-hmm.
So do we need to add that not the way that Grace suggested? I would like to have at least a couple people agree that sense
perhaps
supports what Scott is saying with a slight change.
Perhaps if expected savings would not be eliminated by doing so. Is that more clear?
I think that is more clear.
by such purchase. Instead of by such purchase, it can be by doing so.
Are there other questions besides the one that Grace raised?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sharice.
Because I noticed that we in the resolution too that we want the mayor to be authorized to take the necessary steps and so on and so forth. Frankly, I think having the mayor authorized is a good idea, but I also would also like that there be other responsible parties that could possibly authorize something like that, like the city administrator and or the director of public works.
Yes, we put in the code proposal, we put mayor or the city administrator in case somebody's on vacation or out sick. There's a second person that would be able to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know that there's. I have to look at the thing again. I want to know that there's an ability for someone that is knowledgeable about this particular grant, this particular issue, that would also have authorization to approve it in the event that it's one of those popcorn things that just happens all of a sudden.
Okay, thank you. Tab.
Yeah, I actually have a question about the addition of the city administrator. How does this work for other issues if the mayor is not available? That seemed unusual to me. Don't we usually default to the mayor pro tem if the mayor is not available? How does that work?
So for duties relating to statute, when the mayor is unable to perform the duties, the mayor pro tem is activated. So for example, if the mayor is unable to be here to chair the meeting, then Mary Alice Wu, as our mayor pro tem, would lead the meeting. And the mayor pro tem is authorized to sign on behalf of the mayor in the absence of the mayor when the mayor pro tem is activated.
All right, Tab.
So for consistency, I would say that would be my preference. I hear that, right? There's always a possibility of someone being out, but it feels odd to me for the council to give a non-elected position that authority if that's not the norm. So I get it in terms of the mayor. These conversations happen here in council, but for consistency, I would be more comfortable if it just said mayor.
Well, actually, the city
Go ahead.
the city administrator does have authority. I can designate a signatory, and we frequently have issues where the city administrator will sign.
Mary Alice.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I vaguely remember that in the liquor license, it says the mayor or the designee. Is that correct? So would one way to make it more consistent with other ordinances, should it say the mayor or mayor's designee and not specify the city administrator? I'm looking at Jay and she's kind of shaking her head yes.
To me, again, sorry, James, I just jumped right in. I think it's weird when we do things different than we normally do. So I think you're right. I think I remember that too, that the standard would be to say or designee. To me, that would make sense to be consistent, which probably would be the city administrator, but just to make sure that we're being consistent, especially since this is a change, right, in terms of how we're approving the process currently.
Yes, Chandra.
I assume that there are discussions when you're ready to go to bid or about what, I don't know, the range of pay, just in case the mayor is gone. Like, I assume that the designee would then have the knowledge to know when to approve the bid or whatever.
I think that's a good point. If the mayor knew that she was going to be out of the office, that would be our staff's cue to start talking with whoever the designee or the pro tem was, whoever's going to be the person signing, to give them a brief before we get to bid day.
Okay. Do you know when bid day is?
We get a
Okay.
shorter and shorter notice ahead of time.
So if-
sometimes it's 6 months before, you know, our contract is expected to start. Sometimes 2. It's variable. Our consultant, you know, part of what we're getting from them is they're watching the energy markets every single day of the year, and they're watching when prices are going down and finding us a good buying opportunity.
So I asked that to understand when the conversation starts so that everyone is in the know, you know.
Yeah, so typically somewhere around 6 months before our contract is up, I'm going to have a call with our consultant and start feeling out when we think we might be, you know, going to bid. But at that point we could pass a resolution authorizing someone, but it's gotten to the point where as soon as we sign a contract, it seems like we already need to start planning for the next one just to be sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, Diane, go ahead.
Just to give you an idea what it actually is like when these things happen, the negotiation is done by Scott and Public Works. So the mayor designee, no one is involved in the negotiations. Scott is the point person there. And as he said, in the last couple of years, it's to the point where he'll give me a heads up, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, be ready. And then you literally have sometimes an hour or two, it seems like, to respond. And having someone outside the office, like the Mayor Pro Tem, having to come in from a job and to make sure they're present at the very moment that button has to be, literally, you have to have your finger on the key to send it, almost. It feels like that. So all the prep is done by staff. The knowledge is there, and the person who authorizes the contract is literally the person who's just going to be pulling the, I don't want to use pull the trigger, but it's, pushing the button to authorize it. So I think it's very important to have somebody in City Hall when this is about to happen. At least that's what it's been like the last few times.
All right, Jan?
I think maybe some of what's causing me some discomfort is the language, the mayor and the city administrator shall be individually authorized to execute electricity supply agreement. I think if we stick with the or designee, then it's clear that the mayor knows, right? Like, Carol decides to go rogue and just get everybody electricity. In that situation, it's a funny situation, but the reality is this would allow for that. Again, not that I think that's the biggest problem facing the city of Urbana, but I think that's where my discomfort is coming from, where at least if we say the mayor or their designee, then there's some understanding that the mayor has said, hey, this is coming, I'm not going to be here, I need you to be ready.
I think saying mayor designee is perfectly fine.
So any other questions about this? I'm going to ask if someone feels comfortable making a motion with the 2 changes that we have suggested, which is adding the not to the supplier.
Plan of operation and governance.
Yeah, the substitute language that Scott suggested for that, and the change to mayor or designee. Somebody make that motion and be comfortable with that.
All right, I will attempt to make this motion. I just want to make sure that I have it here. Okay, so I'm going to move to the consent agenda, ordinance number 2025-01001, an ordinance establishing authority to execute municipal electric aggregation agreements with 2 changes. The first change, which is under supply specifications, item number B, after, so starting at if expected savings would not be, what was the word, Scott?
Limited or significantly reduced by doing so.
By doing so. There we go. All right, and then the second change would be, so under the Code City additions and delegations, so it should say the mayor or the mayor's designee shall be authorized. So we're getting rid of individually and we're getting rid of city administrator. Does that sound right?
All right. Can I
A
have a
second.
second? Thank you, Chandra. Any further discussion? Going once, going twice. I'll call a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. This is not final action, so we don't need to do a roll call.
Thank you.
That's why I did that.
You clarify, was this consent? Okay, thank you.
All right. Now we can move on to resolution number 2025-01-010. Resolution approving and authorizing execution of a grant agreement for the fiscal year 23 Safe Streets and Roads for All grant between the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission and the City of Urbana.
All right, good evening.
That fiscal year 23, correct?
It is fiscal year 23 for that program,
Okay,
the Safe
great.
Streets for All program, yeah. So this is a grant agreement with Champaign County RPC. They were the primary recipient of the FHWA money for the Safe Streets for All grant that was received. We are a subrecipient of that grant for the road diet demonstration on Lincoln Avenue between Washer and Killarney. So this resolution would just approve and authorize the execution of that agreement. I can also provide a little bit of an update on the schedule, since that's something we talked about last time when we brought the MFT resolution. We are currently projecting doing that demonstration in the fall, or late summer into fall of this year. So I know that was a concern, to make sure we capture some of that traffic. And otherwise, things are progressing pretty well with that project, and working through some of the traffic data and modeling currently, and then we will also engage in some public engagement in advance of doing the demonstration, so we can make sure people understand what they're going to see, what they can expect to see, the timing of it, and then especially with this kind of new concept, us doing some work and then taking that away. So that's all I've got for you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mary Alice?
So last time this came up, there was a lot of conversation around the phrase pilot, and there was a lot of conversation around what is a good thing and what is a bad thing that happens. And so as I was reading through this memo, it specifically, well, let me go back for a second. When we had that conversation, it was, even though it was a pilot, this is happening, was my takeaway from that. But when I look at this memo, it says that we're going to do this, and then we're going to return it back to the existing 4-lane configuration. So those two things don't seem to go together. Am I missing the pilot here?
I guess
I would just step in. So the demonstration essentially is pavement markings. It's temporary, non-destructive, non-geometric changes.
Right.
So we would install those, we would observe, and then based on our observations, we would inform the final design of what the actual construction geometric changes are. So that's the adding and taking away part of that.
Okay, and what we approved before was the same thing, right? It was the pavement. That's what has me confused, is because when we had this back and forth about a pilot, it was, no, this is happening regardless of.
Well, I think too, the pilot term, I guess, may have been used with respect to the demonstration program itself, because this is something that's pretty new. The concept of doing this temporary traffic adjustment, or lane markings, traffic control, and then removing it. Because in a conventional project up to this point, we would just do the engineering study, design, come up with our conceptual plan, and then implement that plan. And so here we're doing, because of the SS4A grant, we're going to do the demonstration, because that's what the money was awarded for, so we can do that, which is just kind of adding data to the study portion of that project. So The actual implementation, the final product, isn't going to come for several years because that's not included in our CIP for another couple of years. This is really just an extension of the design or the study and design period or phase of the project.
I mean, I like the idea that we're trying something out, we're studying it, we're collecting data, and then using data-informed decisions. So I'm not against it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to reconcile it between our previous conversation. So if the game plan is we're going to change the lane markings, we're going to try it out, we're going to gather data, and we're going to make a decision and go back, that's totally fine with me.
Yeah, just for clarity, everything is exactly as you said. That's our intent. This is a sub-agreement for us to sign to actually receive the money for the exact thing we discussed a few months ago.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Reese.
With this pilot, are you also going to be changing the lights at where Bradley and Lincoln are, and Killarney and Lincoln? Will those? I know I've said something before about how I felt that the one intersection of Bradley and Lincoln is, like, to me, an extremely dangerous intersection. I was wondering if is that part also of the pilot, changing the lighting to dedicate left turn signals or anything like that?
Yeah, so we'll be a little bit limited on some of the changes we can make because, again, we'll have to be able to revert back to the existing conditions. So as far as traffic signals go, specifically at Lincoln and Bradley, we will be able to adjust the timing, and we may be able to shift some of the traffic signal heads to effectively simulate what the final product would be based on what's there now. So that actually, we've looked at that, and I think we feel pretty good about what we'll be able to demonstrate as part of that program. And that would be the lane reduction, but then also being able to adjust the signal timings at Lincoln and Bradley. Killarney is the north end of the project limits, so there actually won't be much change at the intersection there of Killarney and Lincoln, because we'll be back, per the current design, what we've looked at, we'd be back to the 4-lane configuration at that intersection. But there may still be an opportunity to adjust the signal timings there. But those are things that we should be able to do as part of the demonstration.
Okay, so my other question is that this demonstration or this exercise will go on for how long, and then you'll change it back to what it is now? How long will you gather data to figure out if one should be is better than the other?
The demonstration period will be 3 months.
Okay, and so then you'll have that data, and you can determine from that, after you take it back, I suppose, if there's going to be a permanent change, or I know I had some questions about this before, and I was kind of like, huh?
So we'll have a concept that we, based on our engineering design and the study that our consultant is doing, we'll have a concept that we'll feel pretty confident about. And that's what the demonstration shouldn't indicate a lack of confidence. It's just allowing us more opportunities to gather data for this project. And so we'll do the demonstration based on what we think is going to be the best design for the final product, the final project, and then gather data during that period, and then revert back to the existing conditions. And we're not certain what we'll find from that data, from the demonstration. It may be impacts that we see to some of the side streets more than impacts we see on that main line on Lincoln Avenue, or maybe issues with the traffic on Lincoln Avenue. So, you know, that's part of the kind of the intrigue of the project, or the demonstration program, is I guess we'll get to see what we find out through that process. But then, yes, certainly the final design would be based on all of the information gathered through the demonstration and our traffic studies.
I just wanted
Okay.
to.
Great.
I was just going to add to that, with the demonstration money that typically we wouldn't have, it actually may better inform or allow us to enhance our grant applications for a capital project like this that typically we cannot fund without. So if Florida Avenue's any semblance of what this goes like, we went through multiple iterations pursuing that and were awarded after 4 years. So if round 1 of the SS4A, we've got demonstration money, maybe round 2 or 3 will actually be granted some federal dollars to implement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a motion.
I will move on to the consent agenda, resolution number 2020-25-01010R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a grant agreement for the fiscal year 2023, Safe Streets and Roads for All grant between Champaign County Regional Planning Commission and the City of Urbana.
Second.
All right, seconded by Sharice. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up will be item 3, ordinance number 2025-01-002, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 of the Urbana City Code concerning food licenses, and this is related to the subsequent item, which is a resolution.
Yeah, so if it's okay, I'll just speak to both of those
Okay,
together.
thank you.
So really, the purpose when you look at these together is that food and restaurant licensing will be done by the Public Health District, as it has been for many years. And it's not just Urbana doing this. Champaign also does this in the same way. So it just kind of creates a one-stop shop sort of experience, and that includes mobile food vendors such as food trucks who may operate in both cities, still only have to make one stop. So there are 2 items here. One is an amendment to the city code, and the other is an intergovernmental agreement with public health. The code amendment is really just clarifying the exceptions as to which establishments do not have to pay the fee. And those are establishments with a sales tax exemption, government agencies, and then temporary permits. And that consistency is necessary for public health so that they can treat everything consistently, which is more efficient for them. The intergovernmental agreement is really just kind of laying out the rules for how this works between the city and public health. I think it's pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, Mary Alice.
I just have a quick question. So in this ordinance, it states a date that it's effective on April 1st, 2025?
Mm-hmm. That's because that's when the next round of licensing
Oh,
will begin.
gotcha. Okay. All right, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, I would ask, why do we need to make a change if it's the way it's been before?
So the old intergovernmental agreement was really old and outdated, and it just needed some
So this is a
cleanup.
refresh?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And also, we changed, we talked about this earlier when we last amended the fee schedule, but also we're changing the amount of the fee that the Public Health District retains to pay for their services.
Okay. Any other questions, Sharice?
No.
All right, I would entertain a motion for the first one.
I will move onto the consent agenda, ordinance number 2025-01002, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 of the Urbana City Code concerning food licenses.
Second.
Seconded by Jaya. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. And now a motion for the second part.
I can keep going. I will move on to the consent agenda, resolution number 2025-01009R, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District to jointly issue health permits and city food handling licenses.
Second.
Seconded by Jaya. Any discussion on this aspect of it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously, and I assume, Elizabeth, you're going to stay around for ordinance number 2025-01-003, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 5, omnibus.
So in this budget amendment, the single largest item, which is actually a whole list of items, is relates to charges between charges for the IT fund. So IT is an internal service fund, which means they charge the rest of us, all of our budgets, a fee for their services. And in fiscal year 2024, there was I'll call it a miscommunication between IT staff and someone in finance, which resulted in the charges not being calculated correctly. And so these changes will allow us to make up about $200 and I think it's almost $300,000 in charges that should have been in the FY24 budget. So these are actually, I'd consider this a rebudget. They were charges that should have been in fiscal 24. There were a couple of rebudgets also included, one for a donation for tree planting. Those are restricted funds, didn't get spent last year, so we're going to carry those forward. And also for police sergeant promotional testing, which we had thought would happen last fiscal year but did not occur. We don't know at this point how many will test for the sergeant promotion, but we think it will be at least 20 individuals, but any officer who has an associate's degree and 3 years of experience is potentially eligible to test for the promotion, and those costs are going up like many things have since the pandemic. So there are a couple of other small items, including an additional amount related to the transition to a new recycling hauler, which would allow us to make that transition earlier if we determine that's needed. There's been some issues with service in this interim period here. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Yes, Chris.
So Elizabeth, you sent a separate email earlier last week about an answer to Alderperson Grace Wilkins' question about where we stand in the general operating fund. Don't remember the specifics, and you might not either, but this budget amendment that you gave us tonight, it says we're back at that $11 million number and that 26-point-something%, which is within our policy and everything, but it seemed like your email earlier said we had much more money, but what?
I'm sorry. There's been an internal error. You will be disconnected now. Goodbye.
So I think one of the last, I don't remember all the details, but I think one of the last things I said in the email was we're going to reconcile that, and when we present the financial forecast, which it will happen here soon, we'll have a better handle on that. So we were looking at the audited financial report, which is modified accrual basis and combines funds in different ways versus the cash basis we use for budgeting. So we have not updated that here in this budget amendment. We're still rolling forward the old numbers, but when we look at the forecast, which I expect will happen in 2 weeks here, then you'll get a much better fix on that.
Okay. I'm going to ask if someone can text Sharice and see if she can reconnect, because I assume we just hung up on her, and they're resetting the call as we speak. Thank you. All right, other questions about this? I do have a question about the ARPA item. Could you give a little more illustration about the $115,000 that was allocated for an interfund transfer, but decided we were zeroing that out because we didn't need it?
Yeah, I think that was just a budgeting error. We had some transfers, which was part of the standard allowance to the motor fuel tax fund, and I think we might have just carried that out 1 year too many.
Okay. Any other questions? Sharice, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, and we can hear you very well now.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything that Chris said, and there was a lot I just didn't hear. I don't have any questions. I wouldn't even know where to start. Okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I would entertain a motion.
I will make a motion, since this is a budget amendment, I'm not going to put it on the consent agenda.
Okay.
I think we need to have everybody's vote on that. So I'll move on to regular agenda, ordinance number 2025-01003, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 5, an omnibus, to City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Right, thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Chandra. And I think because that it'll require a 6 out of 8 vote, it would have to be off the consent anyway, because it'll need a roll call. All right. All those in favor, any discussion before we go on? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we are on item resolution number 2025-01-001R, a resolution approving authorizing execution of a sustaining Urbana neighborhood grant agreement, Cunningham Children's Home. I have a feeling that a number of these are going to be discussed by Braden.
There we go. Yeah, so I'll be discussing the next 6 resolutions at once, and then if there's any questions about any of the individual agreements, I can certainly answer those as well. So before you are 6 resolutions to approve subrecipient grant agreements for the Sustaining Urbana Neighborhoods Program for Cunningham Children's Home, Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office, Sola Gracia Farm, Steam Genius, Urbana Park District, and Urbana School District 116. So the award amounts can be found in your packet in Exhibit A, and then program descriptions can be found in Exhibit B. So the Sun Grant Program provided $100,000 in funding to support community-based activities that further the city's goals for climate resiliency and sustainability. Several months ago, we had a discussion about the objectives of this program and what council wanted that to look like. So what we came back with were 3 objectives to be met by this grant program. Council wanted the program to promote healthy, sustainable community living, foster creativity and collaboration to enhance climate resiliency, and to include diverse, multi-generational Urbana residents in the process of creating climate-related action and strategies. So with those objectives in mind, we went forward with soliciting applications for this grant program. We accepted grant applications from September 3rd, 2024 to November 4th, 2024. We received a total of 8 applications during that time. A review committee was convened to review the proposals and to make funding recommendations to council. In total, the committee recommends funding 6 of the 8 programs that we received applications for, totaling $71,700. The committee based these funding recommendations on a variety of factors, including alignment with the grant objectives, anticipated long-term impact of the proposed project, project feasibility within the time frame, and also the proposed numbers served by the project. So at this time, at the time the committee reviewed the applications, there were 2 that they did not recommend funding for. The first was Champaign County Bikes Cycling Without Age program, and the second was Eastern Illinois Food Bank's Composting and Recycling Initiative. So as I said at the beginning, there was $100,000 total. These resolutions will commit $71,700 of that $100,000, meaning there is a balance of about $28,000 remaining. And so one thing that we will ask is for guidance on what council would like to do with that additional funding that is not committed with these agreements. So like I said, the specific award amounts can be found in Exhibit A, and then the descriptions can be found in Exhibit B. I want to quickly thank 2 individuals who provided a lot of subject matter expertise for this grant program. So obviously Scott Tess provided a lot of feedback and input on developing this grant program. And then also Professor Warren Levy, who teaches at the University of Illinois. He teaches environmental law. He provided a lot of insight and guidance on developing this program and also served on the review committee. So that was really helpful to have both of them provide their subject matter expertise. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to address, Councilmember Wu had some questions on some of the grant budgets for the projects that we're proposing to fund. You'll notice several programs are asking for some form of staff support for their project. Now, this funding is one-time funding, so the question was, how are they planning on sustaining that staff time if this is one-time funding? So I was able to find some clarification and get some more details on that, so I'll share that now. So Sola Gracia Farm, for example, they're requesting a portion of their grant to pay for a project and outreach coordinator. They were able to clarify that that position will help manage during the course of the improvement project as they are improving and expanding their community classroom. So that person will be funded by the grant to help manage that process, and then will be paid through other sources after the grant has been concluded. Also, Steam Genius, you'll notice they had a line item for stipends for professionals to come in and help consult and work with students on their program. The budgeted amount that they had for stipends was $1,000 per instructor. And so I was able to follow up with Steam Genius and ask for clarification about how that amount was determined and what the positions will be doing. So the response I received was the stipend amount of $1,000 per instructor is a supplement to the staff members to acknowledge the additional work involved in developing the curriculum. It is expected that each instructor will be engaged in 40 to 50 hours, including preparing lessons, teaching, and guiding the students during their working sessions. 40 to 50 hours translates to $20 to $25 an hour, which is a modest compensation for professional work. The instructors have a variety of backgrounds to cover the following instruction needs: sustainability, specifically the history, current state, and strategy in Urbana, audio recording, songwriting, and video script writing. So that was the additional information I received on that. The other 2 programs that asked for staff support were Urbana Park District. They clarified that after the period of the grant, they will be seeking additional funding through other sources to support that. And then the school district is also providing stipends for speakers or for people to come in to help run the program. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
All right, questions? No questions here. Oh, Mary Alice, go
I
ahead.
don't have a question. I just want to thank Brett. I called him this afternoon asking him these questions. I just want to thank you for such a quick turnaround time on that. And just kind of as some background with the STEAM, what I was looking at in there was $1,000 stipend and 5 Saturdays for 2 hours each. And I just wanted to know, like, what in addition to those 10 hours that they'll be teaching or leading a group are they expected to do? So it makes a lot of sense if they're also developing curriculum and so forth. So I agree. Thank you.
Right, Sharice, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't. It was very clear.
Okay, I will let council know we can do 6 votes, one on each of these, or we can do one omnibus and then a vote to pass it on to council. So, but somebody needs to read along.
Okay, I
to do
will
the
read it
omnibus.
all because I want to have an omnibus here.
Okay.
All right, so.
Go for it.
I move that the following 6 resolutions are put into one omnibus, and here they are. Resolution number 2025-01001R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement with the Cunningham Children's Home for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. And resolution number 2025-01002R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement for the Cunningham Township for fiscal year 2024-2025. And resolution number 2025-01003R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement with Sola Gracia Farm for fiscal year 2024-2025. And resolution number 2025-01004R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement for STEAM Genius, fiscal year 2024 through 2025. And resolution number 2024-01005R, should it say resolution number 2024 or should it say resolution number 2025?
It should be 2025. That's a typo.
Okay, so corrected. Resolution number 2025, because I keep tripping over 2025, 01005R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement with the Urbana Park District for fiscal year 2024-2025. And finally, resolution number 2025-01006R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a sustaining abandoned neighborhoods grant agreement with the Urbana School District 116, fiscal year 2024-2025.
All right, do I have a second? I heard Sharice, I think. Second.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna vote on putting those all together. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. They are all bundled together unanimously, and now we need a motion to send that package to City Council.
Can I make a motion to send that omnibus that we just approved onto the City Council consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Chandra. So this is a vote to put that all on consent agenda, recommended for approval. Correct. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes unanimously. Thank you. And then we have one more item on the agenda because we already did 12 through 14. Resolution number 2025-01-012R, resolution authorizing intervention before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board. Who's reporting on this?
That would be me.
Thank you, Carol.
We work closely with the Urbana School District and the Cunningham Township Assessor on commercial property appeals where the change in assessed value will exceed $100,000. And sometimes those that work that we do makes us want to extend our efforts by going to PTAB, which is the Property Tax Appeal Board at the state level. And sometimes that's because somebody will not be satisfied with what they got, the decision that they got at the Board of Review, and they want to go on to PTAB, and we want to protest that, or sometimes we want to appeal to PTAB because we don't like what happened at the Board of Review. So in the past, we've come and asked for authorization, which is required by the PTAB rules from council on a case-by-case basis. And so now, since we're, this is just an extension of the work that we're already doing, it would be, and there are time limits that sometimes constrain us. Not the same kind of time limits on the municipal electric aggregation, but they still are a challenge to come and get authorization on a case-by-case basis. This resolution would give us more of a generalized authorization on those cases where it was the decision of city staff, and we typically don't go alone. We go with the assessor and/or the school district to PTAB. That's the gist of it. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, and I see, is Wayne Williams here to add to this conversation? No? Okay.
No.
All right. Usually when something's about property tax appeal and Wayne shows up, I think he's involved, but that's.
We just manifested
case.
him by talking about
Okay.
it, and then he
All right.
appeared.
Questions about this? Chris?
I'm sorry to be really ignorant here, but I kind of didn't understand what you just said. Is there a specific case that we're dealing with here or not?
Well, there are specific cases. We're not asking for authorization in a specific case. We're, in fact, asking for more of a blanket authorization to get your authorization in those cases where we think it's appropriate to intervene at PTAB that we have your blessing to continue the work we've already started at the Board of Review.
And how long is this authorization for? Is it
This would be an open-ended
forever?
authorization.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a question. How would council know about these items? Because I think I've recalled a couple of times where we've been asked to approve specific ones.
Yes.
Maybe in the last 4 years, not more than a handful.
Right.
But what would be the process of notifying council that we're engaging in that?
Well, I guess first of all, we can tell you, and we can make a point of doing that on some kind of regular basis. But the more active work is actually at the Board of Review, and we typically, we don't get authorization for that; it's not required. So if you had a general interest in knowing what are we participating in across the board and what have the results been, I think that's actually more instructive than just what's happening at PTAB.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Sharice.
I have a question. So Carol, are we we're currently, because looking at the memo, it says something about so many cases, that we are involved in now. So this is an open-ended agreement, so that instead of trying to itemize every little case that we might have to deal with, that we can actually just deal with them as they come?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand that. And the other thing I wanted to know is if we can get a list of these cases that seem to be coming up for review.
Well, that's kind of on point with the conversation I was just having with James, which is, are you just interested in the PTAB cases because those are the ones that we continue to have issues with, or that we have issues with either because we don't agree with with what the Board of Review did, or we do agree with what the Board of Review did and the property owner doesn't agree. So, but there's more activity on the appeal front than PTAB. PTAB's a subset of that. So if you really want to know, if your interest is what is happening on the property tax appeal front as it relates to the city's participation. A bigger list that includes the activity before the Board of Review would actually be the most informative. So if I'm happy to provide a list, but I want to provide one that gives the council what it's interested in.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of, because I'm just thinking in terms of I would like a list, and I'd like to know, like, are we arguing in for our, I don't know how to word it. Are we arguing for our what was determined for our benefit, or are we arguing in that somebody, like you said, some of the property owners didn't like it, and so they've taken it to PTAB, and we're involved in it. So I just want to know, like, are we the plaintiff or the defendant, or however that goes? That's the other thing I want to know.
Okay, so you want to know what's our posture at PTAB?
Yeah.
Okay.
What position we're in regarding
Mary Alice, if you will hold on a second.
I don't know. Is that too much?
Our legal advisor has his finger on the button.
Okay.
I think he might have something to add.
I was just going to say, in terms of the city's posture or position with regard to these cases, it's intervening essentially as an interested party, as a taxing body with a stake in the case, and it's not a plaintiff or a defendant in a traditional sense.
Okay.
It's advocating for a position relative to the initial decision that goes up on appeal. If the taxpayer wants to appeal it, then we can intervene in that case and essentially have our say as to what we believe the correct assessment should be.
Okay, now Mary Alice.
Carol, I believe you said that the state requires permission from City Council in order for us to file at PTAB. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know what the thought process was in terms of having City Council say something? Being able to sign off on it?
I don't know, but I can tell you that the school district has an open-ended authorization. They don't do it on a case-by-case basis, and they've had an open-ended one for years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I know our attorney has come from the city of Champaign. Do they have a similar open-ended authorization?
Yes, and typically it's the legal counsel, assistant city attorney that handles a lot of these cases and works individually with a private attorney who represents the interests of the Champaign Unit 4 school district in a similar fashion. These are sort of subject matter related decisions that are made case by case with as I understand it, it's an ongoing authorization for intervention.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I'll move that resolution number 2025-01-012R, resolution authorizing intervention before the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, go on a regular agenda for approval.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Chandra. Any further discussion? Yes, Mary Alice.
I understand why staff is asking for this. On principle, however, I find myself struggling with granting blanket permission to something. I'm going to be voting present on this one because I don't feel comfortable voting yes or no.
Yes, Chad.
I share some of Mary Alice's feelings on this. I'm fine with moving it on to city council, but I do think more information about what's that background logic, right, of why is it that they're saying there should be city council approval would be helpful. I think I'd also be interested in potentially setting some parameters around limiting the length so it could be reconsidered in the future, just because this is a big change from every time it comes up to never again.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this one. Somebody has indicated they want to vote present.
Ms. Wu,
Present.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes unanimously. We have one more, we have two more items on the agenda that we need to address, but we are at 10 o'clock. Do we have an idea for how long the alternate response conversation is likely to last? So could I get a motion to extend for 15 minutes?
So moved.
Does that mean we're extending it to 10:45?
No, 10:15.
We don't have
We
to
have
until
till
10:30.
Okay. I'm just trying to rush us. That's all I'm doing. Thank you.
What's going on here?
All right. We'll move on to Alternative Response Task Force, RFP continuing discussion. Welcome, Will.
All right, thank you. For the record, I never mind going home early, but, no. So in the packet today, for today's meeting, is the continuing discussion on the Alternative Response Task Force RFP. So you all saw the redlined versions from our previous discussion, which I think incorporate all of the suggested changes. So unless I can walk through all the changes and we can talk about it, or if there's a different process we want to go, that's up for discussion.
All right. I'll recognize anyone who has a question for Will. Mary Alice?
I don't have a question. Rather, I just wanted to say that everything that I had asked for staff to be in here, to the best of my read of this, has all been updated in terms of the intent. So I wanted to say thank you. Made it really easy to have strike through and read and all that stuff. So.
All right, Jaya.
Ditto. I do have there's one small typo to point out in the summary. It says task force. But otherwise, looks great. Thank you.
All right, Sharice, anything from you?
No, nothing from me.
So at this point, to release an RFP, do we just need a consensus from City Council, or will we have to come back and do a motion at some point?
Typically, there's nothing. We just press publish, and then we sign the contract. And then if it's been budgeted for, then we don't see council action. I think the idea with this RFP of discussion at council is there's potential end stages implications that will be council discussion. So we want to make sure we're all in agreement on the front end. So there's nothing formal, but.
So just to be sure, can I get a thumbs up from council members if they're ready for this to be released? Sharice, I can't see your thumb. Is it up?
It's up.
Okay. All right, there you go, Will. All right, next up is council input. Do I have any council members who would like to speak? Yes, Jan.
So I know this came up in public comments and in relation to the ordinance related to surveillance technology, but I do think it's important that the city continues to make it very clear that we stand firm on as a sanctuary city, and I think exploring even what that would look like to more officially restate that I don't think is unwarranted considering the considerable fear many members of our community are facing. So appreciate that comment from the public and just want to restate how important that is, especially right now.
All right, Mary Alice.
And along that vein, I wanted to thank the police department for posting on Facebook the information about how to deal with what the state of Illinois allows for people to do with ice. So.
Thank you. Any others? Mayor?
Several announcements. One, we had a little grand opening last week of H Mart, which was a huge success and continues to be. So we thank everyone involved in making that happen. Also, another business in downtown Urbana opened, which is Yellow Rabbit, which is the speakeasy in the basement of the Cohen Building at the corner of Race and Main. It's a beautiful space, and I hope you can all experience that. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we'll have a ribbon cutting at Baldorado's new location at 208 West Griggs. They've moved from Lincoln Square, and they're now relocated on Griggs Street, along with 25 O'Clock Brewery and soon to be Cloud Mountain Kombucha. So that's a nice triad over there on the banks of the Boneyard. Third, we received today the official confirmation of the $250,000 grant from DCEO, and that was for beginning the conversion of the city fleet to electrification of the city fleet, and that grant is courtesy of Senator Faraci's work at the state level, so we thank him for his efforts on our behalf. I wanted to let you know we were also notified last week by the Federal Transit Administration. The MTD and the city were notified by the Federal Transit Administration that they have now completed 14 of the required steps in the NEPA analysis, which is the environmental assessment of the Civic Center site. This is required for further development or exploration of that site for the new transit center in downtown Urbana. So this process has taken many, many months. The project is actually led by the MTD, but this study has been ongoing for months. So we're almost to the end of that particular analysis, and then community partners can get back together to talk about next steps. So that was huge to get that done. It just took a long, long time. Just a reminder that council members are still invited to tour Hotel Royer. I believe James might have taken the tour. I saw a beautiful photo from a room. But you are still invited to contact Joseph Pryor and arrange a tour if you'd like to see it. Some major inspections were completed this past week, which was wonderful news to hear. And then finally, Deputy Chief did mention during his presentation about the horrendous traffic crash that occurred over the weekend. There were 5 young women approaching the stoplight, close to the stoplight at Kohler and University. They were rear-ended by a person driving an SUV. 2 of the 5 passengers were killed. And the third is severely injured. But we were asking and still ask that from the public assistance, and that would be that businesses along University Avenue are encouraged to share any video footage showing a red Mitsubishi Outlander traveling eastbound before the crash. It happened about just before 2 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. And for any residents with video cameras who reside south of University Avenue on Kohler and Main Streets, the police department is asking for the public's help if they possess any videos of anyone running or walking shortly after the crash. The car is in the possession of law enforcement. The person driving the car is yet to be found. So the investigation is ongoing, but that's where video footage from anywhere in the area would be really, really helpful to in the investigation of this case. Thank you.
All right. Mary Alice, could you take the chair?
Sure. I'll take the chair, and the chair recognizes James.
Just a couple of quick things. I want to publicly state my support for Urbana's status as a sanctuary city. I'm glad we have that in place and can utilize it. If there's a need to enhance it or reinforce it, I'm happy to talk about that. I did take advantage of the tour of the Hotel Royer. I didn't smell it. Apparently there was still peppermint scent from one of the tests that they do to test the pipes. They put some peppermint gas, I guess, through the pipes, and if it leaks, that's a bad thing. You can smell it. But I know they were hoping to get through a bunch of tests This was on Friday, and it really looks wonderful. I mean, it's not ready to open because they're still finishing some things up, but compared to the last time, it is so much more finished than I saw it about a year ago when it was about this cold, I think, when I went to tour it. So I'm really looking forward to it. The rooms on the north side of the newest part have great views of downtown. If you got guests coming to town, you'll want to put them there so they can see our beautiful city. Last thing I wanted to mention is we're in the middle of an election. The city of Urbana is part of the municipal election. I would encourage our residents to become familiar with their ward, which you can find the map on the city of Urbana. I would encourage them to learn about the candidates in the race and participate in one of the most important things you can do, which is vote locally. You can vote early now between January 16th and February 24th. On Mondays through Fridays, 8:30 to 4:30. There's some additional weekend times closer to the election, which is on the 25th, where polls will be open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please participate. We're better when everyone votes. Thank you. Can I have the chair back?
And I relinquish the chair.
Any other council comments? Seeing none, we've come to the end of our agenda, and this meeting is done.